Brand disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by individuals on this platform, the callers plus invited guests, are their own. The information you hear does not reflect the overall views of all parties associated with this brand. We encourage everyone to research all things heard live or via archive for edification purposes. Discretion is advised.
Don't touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk Free Radio.
Help keep the show on the air. If you want to help, you can send your donation through PayPal. The email is debatetalkforyou@gmail.com or through Cash App, $SALSHOWTIME. Thanks for your support.
Peace. What it is, it's your brother Tyvon Swano, aka the Orthodox Moor, aka the Seven Pillars Saracen, and I am pleased to bring to you another interview with Sister Dana Reynolds. I had the distinct pleasure of being able to interview her once before. We had a very interesting and lengthy interview where we covered a lot of information on her blogspot website, AfroAsiaticBlogspot.com, and we talked about her upcoming book that is now out. And so in the interview, we said that we would bring her back when the book was out so we could talk about the information in the book. And before I do that, I want to show you her website so y'all can quickly see it. And I'm going to share my screen, family. Go check this out. There is a link in the description. This is AfroAsiaticBlogspot.com. If you have not gone to this website, please go check it out. The sister has many articles on this website that are extremely well sourced, family. These articles are pretty much a class unto themselves. So if you have not done so, please go check this website out. If you have not checked out the previous interview, please go do so. There was a lot of nuggets of information in that interview. Also, if you get a chance, hold on, I need to go. I have her YouTube in the description. If you have not done so, please go to her website, her YouTube page, and subscribe to her channel. She every Saturday she does a public class to where she lets people come on to her Zoom. And you can have basically a one-on-one with a fantastic scholar in the field who's at the top of her field in what she does. If you're not familiar with her work, family, real quick, you can check her work out in The Golden Age of the Moor. She wrote a chapter for Ivan Van Sertima in that book. It's a very fantastic chapter where she talks about the ethno-history of the Moors. Also, we will be talking about this book today, The African and Arabian Origins of the Hebrew Bible. This is a fantastic book. There's a lot of information in this book. This isn't a book you're going to just fly through or breeze through, but the information in this book will unlock a lot of doors that you did not even know were locked. So without further ado, family, I'm going to bring in Sister Dana Reynolds and my co-host, Anonymous Hebrew. Good morning, family. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good morning, Anon, again.
Good morning.
So, sis, something I'm trying to do is introduce you more so into the Israelite community. You're well known amongst the Moorish community and a lot of works that you've done. So I'm kind of going to start from scratch a little bit, but quickly work into your book. And I kind of want to start with an article in a book that I believe is coming out called The Fear of Blackness. And there's two main things that really changed my world in dealing with your work. One of which was finding out that there was a lot of people that I was looking at and reading about in history that from what the Western perspective, they were telling me that they might have been European or dark-skinned Europeans or something like that. That when looking into your work, I found out were actually Afro-Asiatic peoples. And another thing that I recognized was looking into your work was I got a picture of a large scale migration of these Afro-Asiatic peoples coming in from Arabia and the Levant into North and West Africa, etc. So with that, can you give us an understanding of the premise and the importance of the work you were doing with Fear of Blackness, and kind of like decoding and preserving these people being swept under the rug of history in terms of their origin and their ethnicity?
Okay. Well, basically, it was just kind of an attempt to expand upon what I did in Golden Age of the Moors. I was actually asked to do, this research and article by the publishers of West Africa Review, who are, I think she was the head of the University of New York, what's it called? NYU Binghamton, maybe? Or SUNY Binghamton. She was the head of the African Studies Department there, I think, at the time. But anyway, her and other African professors had gotten together to do this journal, West Africa Review. And she asked me to do it, a kind of an article and put it in. And it ended up being like, basically the whole of the journal. So, and it was basically, I'm just trying to document all of the writings about the Moors. I was trying to show why they were called Black and how this came to be denied, over time, especially the last 200 years by, after colonialism and, the rise of the newer forms of colonialism, including, Zionism, unfortunately, because, when you're different nationalisms have contributed to, trying to take the Black out of Semitic civilization. Okay. And that's because they want to be, that civilization. They want to be. But if you're not going to acknowledge who the people were, I mean, you're not going to get, you're not going to benefit from being called such and such. So, in other words, whether you're Arab, whether you're Jewish, whatever, you should want to know who the original people were and who the original Berbers were, because that was basically, they were all the same people. Berbers, who are now, the Berbers of that time, who are now, basically in Sahel and Sudan, extended across Africa to the very eastern part of Africa and were essentially ethnically connected to the people that were at that time in Arabia. So these were all the same people. And I actually try to document how, even further east into India, there were some tribes that had gone there in very early periods. But I was just trying to show how, even though we try to say in academia, they were trying to say that, all these Berber tribes had gotten their, they wanted to be Arabs, and that's why they tried to claim descent from Yemen, and Canaan and places like that. So I was trying to show how, no, that had been historically documented since the time of Josephus and Tacitus, Procopius. Nobody was considered to have been native to Northern Africa, first of all. And those tribes, all the major tribes of the Berbers, were described as black-skinned. So, and near black-skinned. But originally, just black-skinned. And I was just interested in how that changed, how that perspective of the Moors changed, and how the Moors themselves had changed over, periods of time. And what happened, there was slavery that brought in a lot of the Europeans into North Africa. And, that's another narrative that needs to be fixed, because the original slaves, of course, were mainly from the north. And it's only, after the Atlantic slave trade started that there were the majority of slaves into the Islamic world came to be African. or black African, I should say, black-skinned Africans. But anyway, that was the gist of it, trying to show why there's no need to be afraid, of these people anymore. Because actually, originally, there was a fear of blackness due to the Moors, taking the slaves from Europe, depopulating certain areas of the Mediterranean or certain villages along the coast of the southern Europe, and places like Ireland and places like that, as well as and that's where the Black Peter of Santa Claus comes from. Originally, it was he was supposed to have been a Moor that was stealing European children, because apparently that's what the Moors did originally, and then he converted to Christianity. So that was what that was about. The Black Moor, or Peter the Moor. So the fact that the Dutch and all these, the Germans and all these countries still portray Peter as black, shouldn't be really taken as offensive, because that's based on reality, based on fact. And they're also more inclined to know who the Moors were, because all the time, when you got away from Spain, for the most part, Moor just meant, a black person. And then later on, after a certain period, several centuries after they had come, then there was the Blackamoor thing got started. But anyway, so what should I speak of next?
Something else that I found really helpful in dealing with your work was finding out the concept of what Afro-Asiatic and Semitic peoples meant when they called themselves white. Because sometimes I ran into that phraseology, and I got confused as to what the ethnicity of the people were. Could you speak to how that term is used in the Afro-Asiatic and Semitic worlds, and how it can be misleading sometimes when you don't understand the background?
Well, first of all, there was no, like I say, among the Arabs at least, or the people that made, were Semites, or children of Shem, I should say, because there were no Semites, so to speak. There were people that spoke languages connected to Canaanite or the Hebrew and other Canaanite dialects. And those people, of course, were black people, black-skinned people who lived in Arabia and in Africa, and in, extending into Mesopotamia. So they were not, of course, they didn't call themselves Semites or anything. They didn't even call themselves children of Shem, except, in later tradition, because these people claim to come from Abu Shams Saba, the originally a sun god and a king, or god king, or I should say a legendary king. And there were, of course, people that were in that area of southern Arabia called Yakatan or Katan, and Falaj or Peleg. And those are closely related people. So they started, actually they weren't the only people though. There were other types of Africans, like I said, in those areas. However, what happened over time, when I speak of Jaktan and Peleg, I'm talking about the early ancestors of the Manaean Sabian people. So who extended between the southern part of Central Arabia into the Hadramaut, and probably, since they were related to the people in Africa, I'm sure many of those people had the same names early on. However, after, like I say, the conversion of certain people to Islam, after the early Arab people started moving into Central Asia, Iran, and Iraq, Syria, places like that, they started mixing with those. Well, they had a lot of concubinage and started mixing with those people. Other people started adopting the Islamic language and the tongue of the Arabs, early tongues, dialects of the Arab, and they started calling themselves Arabs. And then over, of course, another couple hundred years, they're considering themselves the Arabs. But that start of the even before Islam, it started in the Christian times. When the Syrians and Greeks, early Greco-Byzantine people, Neo-Roman people, started getting involved in Christianity, and they also started seeing, they started actually the creation of this Ham being black and Ham being Egypt, meaning the United Arab Republic of Egypt rather than the Mitzrayim of Arabia. But Ham originally meant somebody who was working in the, vineyards or the fields, or maybe with cat. It really originally did not have something to do with being black. Ham meant somebody that was, an agriculturalist. Okay, so like I keep saying, there's the Hamran and then there's the Shemran, or the Bedouin pastoralists that were protectors of the client tribes, or Ham, or Hamran, whatever. And you have that allegory or mythological allegory developing about Ham, Shem, and Japhet, even in India, when the Aryans come in. But yeah, so it actually originated more with the European or Euro-Syrian people, Eurasian people, and it had nothing to do with the true people that were calling themselves Khatan, Falaj, all these Israelite tribes, Manasseh, Sulaim, they didn't talk of themselves in those terms. So this is something that is just like anachronistic, reference. It has nothing to do with history, really, except for, in terms of various nationalisms, like I say. That's how these mythologies get created. So Ham, Shem, and Japhet early on, by the early medieval times, like as you'll see in the book you just got, Tyron, by early medieval times, the name Ham basically meant, people along the coast that were fishermen and agriculturalists that happened to be black-skinned. And I say coast, I'm talking about the Arabian coast, Palestine, even the Mediterranean coast. A lot of them were still black. So that's why they say in the Arab texts that the sons of Ham held the coast in the Balkan, places like that. Balkan, which is Palestine and northern Jordan. And then they say Shem was the center of the world. So Shem were the people like even in Hijaz, that was considered part of Shem. And even up until colonial times, that was considered the land of Shem. Even though the people were, still black. But Shem was never really considered anything but dark brown, or black, even in early Arabic sources. Because, as I said, Abiad really meant somebody with shining black skin or somebody with clear skin that was, near black in color. So they called it black buckwheat. So that's basically, darker than me, or, you, Taiwan, darker than it, or darker than us. It's not even Samra at that time among classical Arab. Samar or Sumer is not even us. It's dark. That was darker than us. Now Kedar, Akhtar, that's also, in the dark area, but it's not completely black, but it's dark brown near black. So anyway, so these terms came to be translated differently in the West, and that's how, during colonialism, they start reading these sources, all these sources of the Arabs, and thinking they're talking about fair-skinned people or blue-eyed people. There's another term in Arabic, classical Arabic sources that talk about talks about people that can see, far-seeing, clairvoyant people, like Yemaima of one of the prophetesses of Central Arabia. So they say she had certain eyes of a certain color. I forget the word. I forget if it was Zurek, but that word actually refers to sparkling eyes, sparkling or eyes that could see, into the future, clear seeing eyes. Has nothing to do with blue eyes, but later on, you see those translations about blue-eyed Yemaima, Later on, it came to mean blue-eyed, but not, for classical Arabs, true Arabs. So we just have to remember that most of the people writing, a lot of the people writing about Arabs, especially these ones that are writing about Ham, Shem, Japhet, or even the early Arabian people, are being influenced under the Abbasid time period, in their beliefs about Ham, Shem, and Japhet, and their beliefs that they are Arabs, themselves. So people in Syria and people in Iraq, people in this people that took over the Abbasid Empire, Persian-related folk, Central Arabian-related people, they start to view themselves as the Arabs, and as this, as Shem, as the true Shem, because that was the admired group, and then the Japhetites then became the Europeans, or sometimes it was said to be the East Asians, So it depended, but it really had nothing to do with the Bin Simal, or the people that would call themselves Sham or Shum in Arabia.
Anonymous, did you have a question? I saw you come up mute a little while ago.
Yeah, I was I'm taking notes, so forgive me.
That's okay.
Definitely. I wanted to, because a lot of people aren't familiar, they're not going to be familiar with the hydromount. Right?
Hydromount, yeah.
And so can you just speak clearly, just briefly, to what area of the world we're talking about? Obviously, they can do the research, but I want them to understand, because you're setting a very clear precedent of where these people are settling, where they're moving in and out of. And so we're talking, and I'll make it simple. We're talking maybe, there you go. Thank you, more. So they can get a real clear-cut picture of, you're talking about the people that are moving in and out of this region. And
well, yeah, I'm talking about, well, the Hajjamount is just a small area of the Yemen, which extended up past Sada to, near Mecca. Sometimes even Mecca was included in the Yemen, which is across from Sudan in the same latitude, extending to Amman. Well, that's where the Yemen was. So that's where this culture across from Africa, that the Arabian Tahama culture developed in this area, and expanded to, to the Hadramawt and Central Arabia. But that was 7,000 years BC. We're talking about. So there was an Afro-Arabian civilization, or Afro-Tahama civilization, on both sides of the Red Sea. So whenever you talk about Arabia, you're basically talking about Strabo and Diodorus State, everything east of the Nile in Africa, as well as, the entire area of Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula. So this is just a small, Hadramawt is just where a lot of the people are now today, found in more pure form. But it's the southern part of the Yemen.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, the southern part of the Yemen, and also Aden is in this region. That's another area where we still find a lot of these people. Here's Aden. So this is like, it's like 10 to 19 miles, depending on the year, away from Africa.
Mhm.
So at that time, I'm talking about, even 600 years ago, most of the people in Arabia are still, more related to Africans than they were to modern Syrians and Persians and people like that. The so-called J1 people.
Mhm.
Um, so if you have a map, uh, Taiwan of Arabia, that might be more helpful because
Hold on.
this is like, oh, well, yeah, we can bring this back later because there's Amran, which is called Kush. But yeah, just to show you, because Israel actually extended up into the Assyr area. It was a Yemenite, this Canaanite Yemenite area extended up to Assyr, and according to David Rubani, the adventurer in the medieval Europe that claimed that he came from Khaybar, basically that was the northern area of, that the whole extent of the Israel was. So, so it's a completely different geographic setting in terms of where ancient Israel and Canaan were than today, today. Because today, of course, everybody thinks Israel, ancient Israel of the Old Testament. We're actually talking about the Israel of the Old Testament, was located in modern Levant, or, the modern where Palestine is now. So even the original Philistine or Philais who colonized the area had come from the Yemen. And in fact, that's why Kamal Salibi had, speculated that the name Falasha actually originally came from those people, Falasha in Ethiopia, because the people on the opposite side, right across the way in, southern Yemen, were Falais. You have many of the same, or exactly the same, tribes. Oh, well, I was going to try to show the African Arabia part, but
Oh, okay. Hold on.
yeah.
I actually
Yeah,
got
she
one.
wants-
If you could
yeah.
just,
She's trying to show that connection to
Hold
to
on.
part of that Nile as well, and that's why I had asked her,
yeah,
because it's important to understand this connection, especially when you go back into as far back as she's going into antiquity, to understand how these people start, where they're starting to move around from. That's why they would have called that area that the Bible talks about Goshen and all of that. Like this is a doorway for these people. Like they're moving all in and out of that area, and so
okay. But now we don't have the Arabian part though. But okay. But anyway, yeah. Um,
um, and so yeah, I know like that question seems a little trivial at first,
no,
but
it's not trivial. Wait,
but
what was? Now I forget. What was your question again? Sorry.
just dealing with the Hydra Mount and where it was, and
Oh,
you addressed it perfectly because I knew that you were going to take it and really expound upon it.
well, I forgot. Yeah, now that you're mentioning that again. So what is important? The reason I wanted to show the African areas, the area east of the Nile, which of course those people crossed later on. By 1300 BC, they were crossing into the rest of Africa. But so Hadramaut was occupied, for example, by the Adrami people or Hadaram people. That is still the name of certain of the Beja tribes who claim to come from Suakin, the Suakin area of Hadramaut.
Okay.
And those Hadarame, or otherwise known as Hadarab Beja, are descendants of the people called Blemis, or religious people called Blemis, or Balawem, as the early rabbis called them. Balawem, or in the Himyarite kingdom, they were known as the Bela or Balawi. Bela or Balawi, and you see them in the Bible too, connected to people like Benjamin.
Okay.
I think Bela was the either the son uh, or the father of Benjamin. I forget which. But so what I did in the book, the recent book that came out that Taiwan was showing, It showed the connection between, these names of the Southern Arabian people and how they connected to those in the Bible, like the Benjamin were connected to Namath, and I show where these people are still there were there in Arabia, up until medieval times, and to Gibeon and how they relate to the Gabon, Manaeans. So the Gibeonites were also Hivites or the Hawite people, all people of Arabia that were in that area originally. And Benjamin, or the Yamina tribes, also called Yam, were in the area between the Asir and the Nejran, or in the Central Arabian region, called between those areas. And the area is called Nejran, so in southern Arabia. Okay, well, this is, okay. So, oops, where's the mile at? Oh, no. Okay. I'm just kidding, Taiwan. All right, so, but, yeah, people don't know the basics, so that's okay. So, Hadramaut was in this area, but in general, this whole entire area, Sudan is across from Mecca, which is here, in the same latitude. Up until 600 years ago, a lot of the Arab writers were considering the entirety of the Arabian Peninsula. And I don't know if you guys are seeing, I guess you're not seeing my arrow. But that whole area, for some Syrian writers in Arabic, was considered, part of Bilad es-Sudan. And I'm not sure which ones they were. I know El Amari, I think, was one of them, El Amari. But I know that the so-called King of Middle Eastern Studies also says that. And his name was, I keep confusing Martin, not Martin Bernal. What's his name? Bernard, the guy that wrote, all these Middle Eastern Studies books, that he was supposed to be the modern King of Middle Eastern Studies. But he wrote about that the Sudan was called Bilad es-Sudan, extended really to Indonesia times, certain parts of Indonesia.
Bernard Lewis?
Yeah, Bernard Lewis, yeah. I keep confusing that with Bernard Lehman and Martin Bernal, but yeah, so Bernard Lewis even mentions it. And that's why, I made a note to put it in the Fear of Blackness article, because, it's not just me, Dana, that's saying it or translating it. It's people like Martin Bernal. I'm sorry, Bernard Lewis. And, for example, when Al-Jahiz talks about the Sin and Masin being occupied by blacks, he's not talking about modern China like they like to say. He's talking about the area of Sin and Masin, which for the Arabs most of the time was Java and Indochina, which was at that time occupied by a lot of black people, otherwise known as Kunlun or Kwanlun, Kolan, just like the Southern Indians were known as, because those people were actually closely related, the people in Indochina and Southern India. And sometimes the Zanj were also included as part of those people. The Zanj, some of the gypsies had the name Singani because of that, because Zanj meant, black. So just because people have confused certain terms, today Masin and Sin, or Sin is just considered to be China, but in medieval times, of course, Sin was often referred to Java for the Arabs, but that's where they traveled. And that's where the Hadramawis continued to settle later on. So certain details like that I tried to put in Fear of Blackness. Okay, that was better. Yeah. Tried to put in Fear of Blackness. So in the time of Strabo and Diodorus, this whole area is considered Arabia, not just the Arabian Peninsula, but extending up to southern Syria. And of course, in this area of Jordan Valley, you still have a lot of the people of the Gora or Gorani who are still more African in appearance than they are Syrian. So those are called the Black Syrians by Strabo. Strabo mentions the people of the Taurus Mountains in Lebanon as, Black Syrians, and other places around in Cappadocia. Some of the people in Cappadocia were Black Syrians. So, and even, in early times, Roman times, a lot of the Berber tribes are considered to be of Arabian origin, like the Marmarica or Marmaris, who extended into Libya, and included, a lot of different tribal names like the Nasamonians, and were considered part of the Marmarica. And the Nasamonians were called, well, those were the people that Coropas spoke about. Coropas in 4th century, Byzantine author, or one of his writers, said that the Nasamonian Berbers were the ones that Gildo, their leader Gildo, the Moor, was taking, was making, what do you call it? Ethiopian, he called them Ethiopian, mulatto hybrids in that area because they were taking Roman women and, having children with them.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of even in Roman times, these people were called Arabians, or sometimes they're called Indians, because this whole area was also considered India, and Abyssinian was considered Middle India. This is Little India or India Minor. And in fact, the names Hind and Sind come to later this region in India, northern India, from Arabia. So Hind and Sind or definitely Hind was an Arab tribe originally, an Arab tribe, Arabian tribe. And they were considered closely related to the original Zanj, because the original Zanj were considered an Arabian tribe as well. Or actually, I don't know whether the name came to be applied to them after they moved to Africa or before, but these original Zanj settled in places like Somalia and then moved southward, and then later on mixed with other Africans, and they became known as, in general, as Zanj. But there was a Zanzibar in the Yemen as well. Zanzibar in the Yemen, which was might have been the origin of the name Zanzibar. So there are different names, of the black peoples, and one of them was Maori, which the early Targums state was the same thing as Rama, who is of course related to Saba and Dedan. So basically, all these people that come to occupy North Africa originally, at least in Roman times, are considered to have been people of, who had come from this area. Now, of course, you had Carthage in this Tunisian area, which is next to Libya and Algeria, between, Libya and Algeria, and south of the Mediterranean, right at the top of Tunisia. That whole area was called Afarica, the land of the Afar people, or Ifrik people, otherwise known as Banu Ifrain, and they became one of the major tribes of the Zenata Berbers. But anyway, what I meant to say was that so the Carthaginians, according to these same early Byzantine and even later Tuareg or later African writers, was supposed to have been founded like as early as the 13th century BC. So that means that a lot of these people had started coming in either from this way or from, after they moved here, but most likely after they came here, they might have moved up this way, they might have moved this way across the Nile, because there probably were several waves of people into the North African region. And also this area, Sahara, of course, was occupied by Garamantes and the Faison. The Faison were the same Faison that were over here. And that's how it's written in colonial times. It's sometimes written Faysan because it, was pronounced the same way. The Faison.
Sorry, quick question. So when you're talking about these people moving in here, you're talking about pre-colonialism as well as post-colonial.
So, well, when I say colonial, I'm talking about just, up to between the 18th century and the
Gotcha.
20th century. I'm not talking about that. I'm in fact talking about before the Christian era.
Yep.
A lot of these people before Christianity, all of them before Christian, well, not all of them, but majority came before Christianity and later Judaism into North Africa because, the early Israelites, before the I don't know what, I'm not familiar with so much with the chronology of Judaism, but I know there's like the first temple period, the second temple, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I'm talking about like before, at the time of Moses.
Right.
Moses and later. Because that's when, if you look at, I think it's Josephus, it also talks about the Ethiopic Wars.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's talking about when these people start fighting and, they had to leave their country and move into Africa. Because they say that it's Letushim, Lehubim, and other groups of the Mitzrayim. And Letushim is actually El Tausim, or Tassim, who is a tribe. Sure, Ben Israel, sure. Let me just finish this point. Oregon, Somali people, Zanj people. Yeah, okay, I'll talk about that in a bit. So, as I was saying, Letushim or Al Tausim in Arabic tradition is one of the Amalekite-related peoples that were in South Central Arabia, or Yamama area. And the Amalek are literally a people up until colonial times living in this area. And they're also in other places. They founded, like I said, they were in Central Arabia. They're also known as the Tassim and Jassim in tradition. And these Jawasim people, or Kasim, the same people as Josephus mentions as Ketemath, it's translated Kethem. They were supposed to have left and founded, different places all over the Mediterranean. But anyway, when they're talking about the Ethiopic Wars, those are one of the people that they're talking about. So all these people, Letushim, Lehumim, and other Naphtuhim, all those people were in that area where Mitzrayim was, because the Mitzrayim people were also different places, But that I talk about in my book. That gets a little complicated if you don't know the names of the regions. But they were related to the Amalekite people. And these Amalekite people were special in that they were usually considered, in the ruling class or castes of these people, including the Israelite people. So that's why when they talk about the Ephraim people, Ephraim, son of Jacob, and how the Ephraim, their roots were in Amalek, they're talking about those people. Okay, and they had rulers named Pharaoh, or a ruler named Pharaoh, or descendants of Pharaoh were called Pharaoh, and that's how you get that name of Pharaoh, because the original Mitzrayim were, like I said, Southern Arabian people, did not refer to modern United Arab Emirate or United Arab Land of Egypt, or Kemet, because the name Kemet had nothing to do with Ham, actually, the original Ham, or Hamra, and Mitzrayim. But anyway, these people are the people that are considered to be part of the wave into Africa after the other Canaanite people came. So they did settle in places like Egypt and, Libya and Tunisia, Algeria, and then Morocco, and the Sahara. And these Sahara people like the Garmontes and the Ziguatani and the people of the Atlas were also considered in Strabo's time descendants of Ethiopians. So, all this area to Yemen was occupied by the same people. That's why Josephus claimed that the Getuls came from the Evelites that founded Zayla in Somalia, and also were the Havila of Yemen, otherwise called Hawila. So these Hawila too are also connected to the Jawasim people. The name Jawasim and Kawasim are still the name of those people, or of a tribe in this area. Now they're not the same complexion because they're mixed with other different people. Same thing. They used to live in the Persian Gulf. They used to live in this area for a while. The Huela people are connected to the, and they're also the Huil or Hul of the Bible or Genesis. Hul and Havila were the same people, and they were considered by Josephus to be the ancestors of the Getuls who occupied the area between Morocco and Tunisia. And they're also called by the names like Mesasili, Sili, or Mussolini. And the text is written different ways, by the English translations of these Latin texts, Mussolini, Mussolami, Masili, and Mesasils. Or Mesasili. So those are the people, according to Tacitus, that became the Moors too. But anyway, the Mosili, for example, are also found in this area in Roman times. The Phaeacian are also found in this area in Roman and Byzantine times. So that's why in the 9th century and between the 9th and 12th century, you have people like Ibn Qutayba, Ibn Munabih, and other Persian Arab people, because they were, like I said, a lot of people came in from Iran. They are the ones that translated or spoke about, started speaking about this Ham, Shem, Japheth thing. But anyway, they said that the Fazan, the Quran, the and other Ishban and other groups of Arabians had come to occupy, or had come into Africa, moved into Africa. So you do have people like the Korean that lived there, and you had the Mosili moved across into this area. And the Getuls basically were the people called Gazula or Godala, Godala in this area, Jadala, part of the Moors, and they were divided into, like the other Moors, into the Tuareg, from the Tuareg and the Tibu people that were in Tubu and the Zagawa type people, Zagai type people that occupied places like Zawagitani in Tunisia, or actually southern Tunisia, around Carthage. Am I going to? Well, let me answer first the question that was. I'm going again. I'm being too.
Yeah, when you didn't answer this question, I got a couple more for you.
Okay, yeah, because I need to explain. If anybody has a question about what I said, they need to ask, because I know I'm going to different parts of the world and everything. So, yes, the originally the Zanj, according to Arab authors, were people of the Azd who migrated to Somalia. And that's where you got this whole area is called Azania, Azania, and, named after an ancient king. They had kings named Azania there, and Yazan, places like that. But those both parts of the Red Sea were basically occupied by similar people, even though they ended up fighting, And then later on, like I say, these Somali people. This is also an area called Lam. This this area was called Lamlam, just like over here. You know, part of this area, part of these people moved southward into places like, Zanzibar, even further south, Mombasa, places like that. And later on, other people came from, Persianized Arabs called Shirazis came in much later. So you have this mixture of Iranian, African, Arabian, and Persian culture. Beautiful mixture in Zanzibar and places of that sort in the medieval and late medieval period. But so Zanj became one of the early names for black skinned people in general. But I think that was mainly the Iranians Persians Central Asians that started to apply that name to blacks in general, and then the other people. Because remember, these hadiths are being written by these people, these Central Asian, Iraqi, Byzantine, others. Actually, a lot of the times slave people, Mamluk or slave soldier people. But anyway, okay, go ahead, Tayvon.
Yeah, no worries. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I heard you talking about, and I believe I read in your work that the Hadramawt was considered the darkest or the blackest part of Arabia at one point. Is that correct or no?
No, that's not correct.
Okay, so what's the correct aspect on that then?
Okay. The entirety of Arabia was occupied by populations similar to black Africans. We know that, for example, Hijaz, as late as 500 years ago or 600 years ago, was spoken of by the Chinese as being occupied by very dark purple people. The Yemen was, in 600 years ago, the Yemen in general, which included Asir and parts of, Oman, was considered part of the first zone of the world, or yes, part of the blackest zone of the world, like Ghana Ghana was, I think, the second zone of the blackest part of the world. So not even as light as Ghana, but because Ghana had a lot of Tuareg, and at that time, Tuareg were brown, dark brown people. But yeah, Yemen in general, like this area, had very, very black-skinned people. Hijaz also, in general, the coast in general, the Moors in general, originally were extremely black-skinned people. I'm not including the Tuareg, who started taking slaves early, because that's what they did basically. But that's why the Moors are called black as night by Saint Isidore of Seville. Okay, so they're unmixed people at that time. But no, Hadramawt is just. I sometimes emphasize Hadramawt because it's the southern part of Arabia, like Aden, and it still has a lot of the unmixed type of the pure original dark skin Arab, near black Arab. Of course, it also has now, these areas also have a lot of, or some African peoples as well that were brought in after the 16th century, mainly after the 16th century.
Okay, please correct me if I'm wrong. That I get the understanding that Arabia period was really dark at one point in time, and I believe in conversation we were talking about that at some time after the death of Prophet Muhammad, that there was a large Persian migration in that changed the complexion of Arabia. Do I have that correct, or am I incorrect?
Well, a small part of it's correct. Let me just tell you. First of all, remember, we're talking about Ishmaelites being in this area, northern Arabia, and they're, of course, are called by Europeans the Black Ishmaelites in their texts, but, of course, they'll say now that they didn't really mean black. So that's why we have to go to what did the Arabs say? What does the word Akhtar mean in the medieval era? The word Hudar, Hedar, Barakdar came to mean, and even in the Hebrew text, black, the black people. So this whole area of North Central Arabia was occupied by Kedarites, Ishmaelites, the black people, the same people that actually occupied the Hejaz, because it's the same ethnic groups that occupied Hejaz occupied Central Arabia. That's why it's ridiculous for people, these colonial people to come around and say, oh, well, Arabia was always looking like Syrian or whatever, Lebanese, Iranic people. The Assyr was part of the Yemen. The Assyr is occupied by both African-looking people, high up in the remote areas in the area of Jizan, both African-looking people, as well as Iranian people who have still have Iranic cultural features. They look Iranian. They have Iranic or Persian culture. It's the same thing in the Yemen. You have the women, like I showed, wearing the conical Tokharian type hats. You have the men wearing the flower hats of northern India and probably ancient Persia, since that was part of ancient Persia. And they look exactly like those people of Kabul, Afghanistan, places like that. And we know, but anyway, yes, after, and I'm talking about long after, there was also migrants were brought in, or the people were brought in from Persia, like Syria, into Arabia to do the mines, to work on the mines. So that's part of what happened, from Persia to work on the mines. And when we're talking about Persia, basically we're talking about Central Arabia, Central Asia, not just what's now called Iran, Central Asia, so Afghanistan. This whole area extending to, like I say, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, the Tajikistan, all those stands, are Central Asia at a certain point. And those are the people that actually took over Islam. And you also see those are the people who paint themselves in Islam. And that's why you see a lot of textbooks have pictures of those kinds of people in, on their covers. So, and they also conquered Turkey. And that's where you get the name Turkey. Turkmeni people, the real Turks, are still in Asia, look like people of Central Asia, and almost like Mongol people. So those are the people that took over Turkey, and also you'll see a lot of those people among the North African along the coast. You'll see those features, or even among the southern Maghreb people. But so they also came under the Carmathian period. There was a wave of Iranians in the Carmathian period. What was that? I don't know if it was the 8th century. I forget. But so that's why you do start to get certain people coming in. And Tariq Berry has in his book even an Arab guy saying, or an Arab slave saying, God, can't we see any more Arabs in the desert anymore? What's going on? That's what he was like being sarcastic, saying, when will I see a face of an Arab again? Because there's just a lot of people coming in after a certain period. So during the Abbasid period, they start coming, but much, still in the time of the, as late as the 15th century, there were still mainly people of Afro-Arabian appearance in that area, or black-skinned people, because we know even Dahabi said, of Syria, said that you could not see in the Hejaz a fair-skinned Arab, or it was very rare to see one, and if you did see one, you basically knew that it was a descendant of a slave. So the Hejaz is that area which includes Mecca, Medina, Jeddah, the sacred precincts of Islam, or where early Mohammedans were, followers of Muhammad. including the Ansar and other people that are described as black, and the Sulaim described as black, and the people of Khaybar described as black. So if anybody wants to, argue, well, no, that can't be possible, these areas are black and stuff, all you have to do is look at even texts as late as the 15th century and 16th century. The people in these areas are described, in towns are described as black. Now, like I said, there was a wave also of, after the 16th century, there was a wave of people of Syro-Arabian descent who were fair-skinned coming into this area. And that's how you get people like the Anaiza coming down in here and linking up with the Dawasir people and other, the Black or Shamar people. The Shamar also are here, descendants of the Thai. The Thai, of course, who are black, people of Madij, or brethren, or people of Madij. So these people now coming in after the 16th century are fair-skinned. They moved down, because the colonialists had started doing things. The British colonialists had started doing things, and the Cobb Arabs, the dark-skinned Arabs that were still there, they were defeated. The Cobb, Muntafik, other people that had occupied this area and the Gulf that are very, very, near black or dark brown in color. And so many of the people in that area today are, of course, of that group. Muntafik bin Ukail bin Cobb bin Beni Amr bin Zaza bin of the Hawazin bin Mansur bin Ikramah. Okay, I can go on and on and on. So all these people, all these different tribes, Ukail, Muntafik, Cobb, all those different tribes related to these Central Arabian people were dark brown, near black people, even in colonial times. And their descendants, according to the Arab news service, I forget what it's called, Arab Press, something, are 2/3 of the black Arabs in Iraq today. And of course, they're probably mixing with the African descendants that also came up there in the last 300, 400 years. Because the original Zanj, according to well, anyway, I just wanted to make that clear that a lot of the Iraqis in that area that are called black, that people are saying there's black Arabs that are of African descent. Most of them are not related to Africans. Most of them, again, are related to the Arabians, just like the people in this area next to them, Jordan, that are still black. A lot of them are descendants of the Arabians and Nabateans, who were also early Arabians. So the Zanj, the name Zanj, and the Zanj revolt, according to certain recent Arab scholars, that was not a revolt of African slaves, but a revolt of Arabs, like the Bahila and other Central Arabian tribes that lived there with the non-Arabs. So that Zanj revolt, I'm not sure if it happened during the Abbasid period, but I think it might have happened in the Abbasid period. But anyway, there were groups of black people there that happened to be Arab, and there were also certain Africans that came in to work with the Arabs as well. But most of the people in the Zanj revolt, according to, I know one author in particular, were not Arabs, but not Africans, but Arabs. So even today, though, people keep telling me that are from that area. They keep saying that most of this area of the peninsular Arabia, is still largely occupied by black people, but they're not shown over here or something. I don't see a stream, Anon. Were there people writing on it?
No. My stream had glitched out. So I was just checking.
Okay.
Oh, I don't see. Let me see. Maybe.
No, it was just mine. It was just.
I didn't have mine on comments. Now I see a lot of
Yeah, don't mind the chat. Don't mind the chat.
Oh, okay.
Don't mind the chat.
Yeah, we kind of suggest just let them be them. You might run into a couple trolls. So
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
The one guy,
So Anonymous, did you have any questions? Because I was about to start going into the book a little bit.
crazy guy.
no, she as always, very thorough. So she addressed anything that I would have brought up. So let's go ahead and get into the book. And once again, I just want to thank the sister because she's bringing out a wealth of information. And for those of you that aren't familiar, like Moore said, they did do an interview before, and you can go and watch that and see her credentials because she's very humble. So I don't want you to think that she's just up here fly by nightness. Like, she has an extreme amount of she has a very deep pedigree scholastically to speak from the position that she's speaking from. And so we talked about this before, and definitely go watch the previous stream, get an understanding of her scholastic resume. And that's specifically for any trolls. I just wanted to put that out there.
And with that scholastic resume, go ahead, sis.
They won't care. They won't care, the trolls. but anyway, the only thing I want to say about that, the only thing I'm really super proud of is the article in Golden Age of the Moor, and I say I'm proud of that because a lot of people think sometimes they come and argue with me with that text. They think they don't know who they're talking to, and they come back and argue with me, and using that text, using my article, so they don't even know how to interpret, what I'm saying in that article. But that's why I sometimes use, Dana Reynolds Marniche, Dana Reynolds Marniche, because I know in that text I think I was still Dana Reynolds.
Yeah.
I think. But so that's why I just like to say that, and then some people had actually kind of, I'm not going to say who they were, but plagiarized in the same, well, it was actually really one person in that same text plagiarized from it and took and made their own article, which I was really mad about, and still actually kind of mad about, but anyway, so that article though, even though it's wasn't peer reviewed, Dr. Van Sertima had said that he had received ravings about it from all over the world. So that's why I'm kind of proud about that one, because apparently, that's when a lot of Africans, their eyes got woken up and stuff, which is what I want. I really want Africans to know, not have their history distorted in this way by people that were in charge of their universities. So
yeah, that portion of that book was very powerful for me the first time I ran into it, because it was the beginning of me being able to understand something that you mentioned a few weeks ago on your channel about basically a 3,000-year migration, Afro-Asiatic migration,
right.
into North and West Africa. And once I understood that, I was like, wow, like seeing things like the Yemen or whatnot involved in stuff like that. It was the beginning of that understanding for me.
Right.
It was a very powerful article. So for people who have not read that, please, first of all, you need to go buy that book. Second of all, you need to familiarize yourself with that information in there. But going into the new book, or go ahead. So you have something to say?
Go ahead.
But going into the new book, for those who aren't familiar with your work and people like Kamal Salibi, in talking with you and reading your book, you get the understanding that something you talk about a lot is the people in the early part of Genesis can be found in Southern Arabia, etc. Can you please break down that concept for people and correct me in anywhere where I did not say that correctly?
Yeah, no, my point is that all of the people of Genesis are found mainly in this Afro-Asiatic culture in Arabia. Now, possibly there were still some, they meant, both sides of the Red Sea, but for the most part, And even when you see the hadiths written by these, major commentarists on Islam, they're saying that the folk of Noah were the people who worshipped Suwa and these early idols of the Yemen, like the Madij people I'm talking about, and people now in Hadramaut, So the early Khatan people, Kara, Mara, Shaha, that are still found. Actually, now a lot of them moved into the Horn of Africa. That's why I say that. So, this book is basically about the Yemenite roots of the Genesis and some of the other books of the Bible. So especially the first 5 books of the Bible, the Exodus, the conquest of Canaan, all that stuff occurs in this area. And it's important to note that apparently a lot of modern specialists in Arabic don't know this, or Arabic writers don't. In Arabic writing do not know this because, well, anyway, I was going to send my book to somebody, and I was telling him about the concept, and the guy was saying it's Michael McDonald, who wrote a lot of the translations for the books of like Tabari, and people like that. Very well-known, reputable writer. I think he's at Oxford. And he's one of the people I was going to send my book to, but he said no, the concept to him sounded kind of mad. He said he's sorry, and I said, well, I'm sorry too. I guess, But so there are people that, just like me, I would have thought the same thing 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, that Israel and Canaan, being in Yemen or south of Mecca was, not feasible to even look at. But as I say, when I was at Zahir was the laboratory that this Yemenite guy was working at. He's also working on his doctorate, like Zahir was at the time. And he's the one that brought up that book. I didn't know about Kamal Salibi's book until that time. That was 1984 or something like that, 1984. Or after 1986, I forget. But around that time, and then he's the one that brought up the book, even though I don't know if he took it seriously either, but he was the dark-skinned Murad man of the Madij tribe. So the Murad are of Madij, the Thai are of Madij, and he brought that book up. At the time, I thought it was crazy because he said this guy had said that all of the tribes of the Bible, Genesis, came from Arabia. And of course, nobody believed that. However, I had since learned, that the Israeli archaeologists themselves know that there's no evidence for Israel of the time of King Solomon and David in the Levant, and that they never even found the tribes. There's no real evidence for the 12 tribes of Israel being in the Levant. So, that got me thinking, well, maybe, I have to look into this, because Josephus did say that Keturah's children all came into Africa or settled in Troglodyte Ethiopia, which is where, of course, Somalia is, and into the Afar. That's also where the Afar Danakil people are in the Eritrean Ethiopian area. And then I started to notice, I had always wondered, the names of these people are so much like the names of Genesis. Afar and Afar. And Josephus said that Eudatus came across Africa, or Dedan, also known as Dedan, came across Africa. And, I kept thinking, thinking, where was this Ethiopia that Judatis settled? I thought, it must be like in the southern part of the East African area or something, because, there you have the Tutsi, and I thought, oh, maybe the name Tutsi is related to, Watutsi is related to Eudatis or Dedan, because they're very tall. So that is also a possibility that the Tutsi, who also claim to come from further north, are, and claim to be Hebrews, a lot of them are part of that wave. But at the same time, I was looking at other colonial texts and Orientalist texts, because that's where a lot, if not most, of my information came from regarding the tribes of Africa and Arabia. And they're the ones that actually became fascinated with the links of Africans to places outside of Africa. They start, some of them, like H.R. Palmer, had maintained that a lot of these African people actually came from Elam. When he says Elam, he's talking about, from Iran or something. So that he claimed, he thought that they were Elamites, because he started looking at the traditions and the Maharams and the which are manuscripts of the, Kanuri and people like that, Kanuri and the Zagai, the Songhai books, and the traditions surrounding all those towns, the regions of the Sudan. And that's where you see a lot of the information regarding the connection between the names of their legendary rulers. For example, Odudawa, like I say, and Nimrod, they claim to be, have come with them from further east. And a lot of them claimed from the Yemen or from Canaan. And of course, then everything started to make sense if you think of Canaan being in the Yemen, which is where the Arabic sources, some of the earliest Arabic sources, put Canaan. And then I started to put two and two together, because, of course, that's where the tribe of Kanana did live. In the early manuscripts, you see the Kanana tribe lived in that area. Not only that, I found out later that, a couple years ago, that they lived up until the 20th century in that area. But it's only in the last few months that I've discovered that, they were actually a part of the people called, today, or at least in the 20th century, there were people, part of a people called Hud Hail bin Kuzaima. So, of course, the Hud Hail, as I keep saying, the Hud Hail, Huzail people in that area are described as having black and shining skins, because they come from the original Kanana or Quraysh people. So the Quraysh and the Kanana in certain areas still tend to have very black skins. That's something that, a lot of people don't know. But I had learned that a long time ago. I couldn't really believe it. So I asked my friend Daniel Dawson of the Caribbean Culture Center in New York City about 15, 20 years ago, I think, to show me pictures of this lady's talking about, because one of his friends was a doctoral student over there in Sinai, and that's where, the Quraysh still live, or were living then. And so, yeah, he brought back pictures of these black people, and they just look like regular black people. So I said, oh, okay, so the Quraysh, that means that the Kanana were black. But I didn't really put two and two together, that because, that Canaan, that the word Canaan was related to the word Kanana, because it's usually spelled Kinanah. But then I learned that it's not just spelled that way, it's spelled different ways. And anyway, so this area directly south of Mecca, was also known as the Plain of Canaan, the Plain of the Kanana tribe. And the lowland of the Kanana, or else further south, the Wadi Kanana, the Wadi of the Kanana people. So it's plural for Kenana. And then things started to make sense. That is the land of the Cananea or Canaanites. So that explained why, certain Moorish people, early Moorish people in America had said that, Canaan was south of Mecca and all that stuff. So the original Canaan was south of Mecca. The Canaan of the Old Testament was south of Mecca. It's next to, places of Cush, south of Mecca, and Amran and other places in the Tahama. And of course, nearby are the Philistine or Philace and other tribes I started, looking into all the different tribes in that area of the Assyr and the Yemen, especially after I found out there were other people doing it. And then to top it off, I found somebody told me about the Kuranite, this Kuranite website, and which had not only the tribal names, but the place names of the Bible, all, hundreds and hundreds, in all their logistically accurate placement. So in terms of the Bible, you have groups of names, geographical names listed together. So in these Kuranite researchers had found the same thing. So this in the last 2 years I had discovered it. I found the same geographical coordinates of these places under their same names. Now that's something that Salibi had done, but he hadn't done it well, or only a few of the only half of the names he said were in the Assyr area. A lot of the other names, the Assyr area, which is now it's north of Yemen, it was considered part of Yemen, but the southwest Arabian area north of Yemen was called Assyr. It's still called Assyr. And the Yemen in general, though, had many more of these people and the place names accurately listed. So actually the entire area from Yemen to Assyr was the land of Canaan, Israel, and Edom. Of course, Moab was a town, an early town in this area. But the Moabites, as I've been saying in some of my previous discussions, ended up leaving the land of Meru near Sana'a in Yemen, western Yemen, and spread into the Assyr area as Uman, and Ma'ain. So the Yemenites moved north and finally into the Jordan area, where they found in places like Amman, Jordan, and Ma'ain, or Gur Safi, places in the Jordan Valley. And that's why you get these Ammonite, Moabite people up there. In medieval times, they're called Moabites and Ammonites. And these Moabite, Ammonite people crossed into North Africa during the Islamic waves. Okay, so that's how you get that idea of Moors being from the Moabites. But in reality, those were the last wave of the Moabites of the Arabian peoples into Africa, the Islamic waves. So, any questions?
Yes, ma'am. So, in going further into your book, well, first of all, I get the picture that what you're saying is that the names and places in Yemen are in southern Arabia, and then later on, those names get taken to what is known as the Levant, etc. Correct? Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But that was, when I say later, according to, it's much later than the earliest people there mentioned are the Salimi or Sulaim, Banu Sulaim, who are connected to the Madij of Yemen and other people in the Az people, the Jadam Arabs, because all of the northern Arabian people claimed descent from the Yemen. The Ishmaelite or Arabs by adoption claim descent from the Yemen. The reason they talk about, northern Arabs and southern Arabs, or Arabs by adoption, and the pure Arabs, or the Qattan and the Mudar or Mudir people, is because there was a political conflict going on between people in the north of Arabia and people in the south of Arabia. And one of the Qattan people that were called Arab or Yarab. So those people were ancestral to many of these, Madij and all this, or not Madij, but other people. I think Madij were even sometimes considered, people of Ishmaelites rather than Qattanites, but or Ma'ad, because Ma'ad and Madan were Yemenite people that moved after Nebuchadnezzar invaded the Yemen, moved into Hijaz, and that's how Medinites first moved north. But the original Medinites were people of Yemen that moved into, like Joseph said, into the Horn of Africa, the troglodyte Ethiopian area, and then they moved, northward into the Sahara, and then further west into the Maghreb, into the Sudan, across the Sudan. So, well, I don't want to go too off topic, but
going further in your book, I get the concept that I don't have to go too far in your book actually to get this concept, right? Like, so not only are you talking about like the ancient concept of Israel and Canaan and all that type of stuff being in Southern Arabia, you're talking about later on that historians like Al-Tabari are talking about Jewish tribes in Arabia. Is that correct?
Well, when you talk about Jewish, that's different from Judean, because Judean were biologically. I like to use the term either Israelite or Judean, because Judah, and those tribes, Benjamin and stuff like that. I guess it was was Judah in the south or north? That was the north, I think, of Israel. But anyway, the Judeans themselves, had moved into this area from this area. Now, people like the Banu Yam moved into this area. That's how you have the Yahar of the Yafi bin Kassid, who are related to the Banu Yam, or Benjamin. The Banu Yam, or as they were called in medieval times in texts, Yamina. They also came into, Ethiopia, and the remnants are still there, but they moved across into Egypt and Nubia and the Nile, and then further west, yeah. So they're still called. Also, the name Yibrin is there, Yibrin or Yibir, and also Yibrin, and they're also found in the Hadramaut and areas further east in the Yemen. So, yeah, several of these people that were specifically Judean as opposed to Israelite, or Yabrin, the original Eber people, moved into Africa by the way of the Yemen. So I can't see now that much, but
Oh, my fault. I forgot to present. My fault.
that's okay.
Oh, is it sharing? Oh, I think it stopped sharing. Hold on. Pardon me. There we go. There we go. So if I heard you correctly, then so what you're saying is the proper way of understanding it is El Tabri's list of Israelite tribes in Arabia, correct?
Oh, say that again. I'm sorry.
Where the proper way of understanding that would be these are a list of Israelite tribes in Arabia.
There's actually like the Jewish tribes, most of them, except that the Banu Aus and Alf, of course. Well, no, Alf was Jewish. Banu Aus was Israelite. But the Nadir, Kareza, and the Kainuka were said to be the Kahanim. That's what, you can find that on the web now, that those were the Kahanim, and they lived in Khaybar and Medina, right? Yeah. And, yeah. Kareza, however, some people think are the same thing as the Bnei Kareth that you have up there. Bnei Kareth, Banu Harith. Now, the Banu Harith bin Kab also claimed a connection to Eliezer, the priest. And it is also their tribe, I think, that were part of the Yam, Banu Yamina, Benjamin, that in one of Michael Lecker's articles, he says that they were the tribe in Nedran that introduced or started to spread Judaism in the time of Bilqis, or the queen of, early queen of Sheba. So in Arabian tradition, of course, a lot of the Judaism started much earlier than the Western people like to say in Arabia, or it started in Arabia. Actually, that's what the Judaism of the Yemen says, or the Jewish people in the Yemen say. But for example, even today, from what I understand from other books, it says that the Jews of Dar es Salaam near Sana claim that is the true Jerusalem. Dar es Salaam in near Sana. They don't claim to come from the Levant. Some of the Jews in Yemen are saying that they have always been there. That's their original homeland, which would, of course, agree with what other Arab sources say, but not much later sources, but the earliest Arabic sources and the earliest Judaic sources, not necessarily Roman sources, but the people that were from that area claim that they were always in that area. It's modern Western sources that try to say that there is a distinction between the Jews and the Hamirites and the Ethiopians, and that Judaism was brought from the north to that area, that kind of thing. So, and that's why Benjamin Tudela said that where were the most Jews in the world, or most of the Hebrews in the world? He said in southern Arabia. And that was, what was that? When did he live?
Who said that? Excuse me?
Benjamin of Tudela. I think that was 12th century. Yeah, that was 12th century. So wow. He's the one that also went over to India and saw that a lot of the black Cushites over there were living with black Israelites, black Banu Israel. So yeah, and talked about the Cushites being over there in Malabar, or these people are the same people that probably were spoken of by Herodotus, or by what do you call it? Megasthenes, and other early Greeks as being the Kalani, or Jews, because that area of the Malabar coast was called Kailan, or Kulam. Yeah. Yeah.
So on this channel, I also was blessed enough to have the and also have the distinct pleasure of interviewing a Lemba tribesman, Cohen Hamandishe.
Wow.
And wonderful conversation. And family, if you haven't seen that, please go check those out.
Oh, I will, definitely. Yeah.
But in talking with him, their story is that they came from an exile in Babylon, went to Yemen, and then went to Africa from there. But they also claim to be Levites. And what I thought was interesting was I interviewed him right when I had just gotten your book, and what he was saying seemed to ring very similar to something that I read in your book concerning the claim of Levite tribes in Yemen. Would you care to speak to that aspect of your book?
The origin of the Levite tribes in Yemen?
Or not origin, but just them being recorded there, or what your book has to say about them.
Oh, well, I mean, that what I had discovered even right before I had ordered a book by Al-Hamdani, I think it was Al-Iqlil, and he starts talking about, how Solomon's palace was in the remnants of Solomon's palace in Yemen, and the Banu Lua tribe, which I had never heard of before, and I'm wondering, wait a second, Banu Lua? And he keeps talking about the greatness of the Banu Lua, and then I realized he was talking about the tribes that were connected to Amr, Wuzakia, and what's his name? Gershom, and Jersham. Gershom or Jersham. And a lot of people don't know this tribe. That's the name of a tribe of the ancient Sabians, or in ancient Sabian, in inscriptions. Several hundred years BC. Jersham or Jersham. And if you look at the traditional genealogy of the Arabs and link it up with the Levites, you can see how those tribes, they're obviously talking about the same people. However, my main thing is that I was trying to see how, especially in Fear of Blackness, how they talk about the Sudanese texts that talk about the Harun and Korah and Kara, and how, after some fighting or some conflict with the king in that region, they had to leave. These people had to leave, and that both the Wakur of, otherwise known as Songhai, and the Wangara or Sonink people, originated in that conflict from these children of, descendants of Harun, who of course were the Levites, and are the reason why those early people are called, the rulers of Ghana are called Jewish. So the fact that people are trying to make up all this stuff about, well, they were influenced by some Jewish people that came in there, of course, thinking they're not non-black peoples. Really, if you look at everything, combine everything with what Joseph has said, look at where the Sonink and the Songhai were in Ghana and places like Garamantia in early Judean times, or early Roman, I should say, times. And then remember where they were supposed to come from before that, from Carthage and places further north, from the Zalgitani area. All you can do is link together, all you can really, I should say, it actually just confirms, that there is a movement of entire peoples, not just a few, maybe white Jews that came down from Wargla and influenced these people. Now, the Sonink people, Al-Barabir and Amaima, who were originally Jewish, they claim to have come from Wargla, which was said, but those areas were said to have been in existence since the time of the Queen of Sheba and Solomon. So And I mean, that's not necessarily true, but that's what they say. That a lot of those places in Numidia, which is where those places are, um, were founded that far back. So mostly, if you're talking about, West Africans being Judean, you're really talking about being Israelite or being from the Levitic branch of, and that is, of course, that ends up being the Judeans, but from the Levitic branch of Israel. Okay, so and all of the people that are related to those people were originally Jewish. If you look at early, where the Jews were in Africa. So, but by the time, let's see, by the time of, the early medieval times, a lot of these people were spread in the Asir, spread in the area of Nejran, and in the Hejaz, and that's why you have the Qurayza, who are very probably the Harith or Hareza, the Quraysh bin Kab, described as Jewish and small and black, closer to black than any other color. But I mean, it's so much information. You just have to know the background of every tribe, or else you're not going to be able to remember or prove it. So you have to know, why I'm mentioning again and again the Sulaim, and why I'm mentioning again and again the Guy people in connection to, because that has connection to all the other stuff in terms of West African Judaism and Israelite Israelite people, who later became the Moors, who later became Muslim in Africa. A lot of those people. So, for example, I have a question. What was your favorite part, Taiwan, of the book?
Okay, favorite.
I'm sure you have a lot of favorite parts, but no.
Yeah, you're trying to make me choose. Because the truth be told, there was an overall experience with it all, right? Because there were certain. So when I get into the entry of the book, the first thing I like is that you're giving me these list of tribes, right? From what's happening. So I'm coming in. I'm like, okay, there's this whole new set of names that I wasn't. If I'm not aware of, I'm coming. I get this picture painted for me, right? And then how to say it? Okay, because there's a lot of aspects of your book.
Yeah.
I try to tell my friends, like, there's certain pages, like, I swear, like there's some pages where half of it's footnotes. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Academic book.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. I think probably my favorite part right now is actually this part that I'm talking about here in terms of the Levites being in Yemen, because it spurred it furthered a conversation with me and Cohen Hamadishe to where this doesn't even have to do with your book, but this is why I like it. He started telling me about an East African slave trade that went into the transatlantic slave trade that I knew nothing about. So just being able to link this information together went into a whole nother conversation to where it blew my mind because Cohen and them, that they say that they're Yemen, their brothers are in Yemen, and so they're another Afro-Asiatic people, and he's telling me that he believes that some of them also made it on slave ships that made it to America, and so I did further research on that and found out that there was actually over 500,000 people taken from Mozambique slave ports and whatnot that came to the Americas, and it blew my mind, and we're finding out. And not to cut you, but we're finding out that there's people here in America that are actually having a close genetic tie to the land, but when they take genetic tests and they go through GEDmatch and whatnot.
Oh wow!
Matter of fact, I just had a conversation with Cohen and on Sister East channel a channel I'm gonna try to get you on as soon as I possibly can, with Tudor Parfit.
Oh, okay.
And he was talking about the viability of being able to actually start doing a DNA collects in America to see if there's to see about American connections to the Lemba and whatnot.
Okay.
So there.
Well, yeah, they need to really do a DNA test, DNA connection of the Lemba and the West Africans too, though, because
that's exactly what Tudor said. That's exactly he was talking about that concept because he was talking about a people in a West African secret society of doctors and healers called the Lemba, and then he was I believe he was connecting them to Luengo Jews, etc., whatnot. But he was talking about there needs to be a similar thing done there that what he did with the Lemba and also going into Yemen where he did DNA collects and was connecting people genetically, etc. He was like, no, there's work to be done in West Africa doing the same thing.
Right, because I think there's probably a connection between the Lam tribes of Lam, and I don't know if there's a connection between the Lam who are in West Africa and East Africa, and if those were connected to the Lemba or not. But that's something I'm interested in finding out too. That's just something new.
The Lam tribe.
Yeah, the Lam or Amema, who are also in West Africa, who are Sonic related people. The Amema, who are south of the Barabir,
Mm-hmm.
or in other words, the Barabir are the Gnawa or Janewa people. And they also include the Lam or Amima, and these were Jewish people up until, medieval times. So the Sonic in general were originally Jewish. They were called the Wangara. They're the traders between the Maghreb and the Sudan. They're the scholars. They're the builders, masons. They're the, we're not talking about just a few, clans of people. We're talking about a whole group of people, because the Sonic were ancestral to many, many different clans of people. The Serer, the Masi, the Nuke, Jahank, the Jalank, and the Marka, many, many dozens of clans. And same thing for the guy who are related to this in ancient times. They're also ancestral to many, many different peoples. But by the time so for example, the rulers of Ghana, the Sonic claimed descent, the Al-Barabir Sonic claimed descent from the rulers of Ghana. The rulers of Ghana were Kaukau, people who were otherwise called Zagai. So basically, when you're talking about Songhai, you're also talking about Sonic people. Sonic adopted the Niger-Congo language or dialect group, but they were, related to the original Nilo-Saharan people speaking people of the Maghreb. So that's why, I always talk about how we don't know exactly when and where these dialects were adopted, in terms of the Nilo-Saharan dialect too, because we don't know what languages were spoken in ancient prehistoric Arabia. The Nilo-Saharan dialect may also have been spoken there, just like the Afro-Asiatic dialect one was. But the Afro-Asiatic dialects became the prominent dialect, that was adopted by everybody. And, some of the dialects are Arabic, others are Sahadic, or the South Arabian dialect. But that doesn't mean 3,000 years ago there were not other dialects there, because if you look at an early text of the Jewish encyclopedia, it'll tell you that, there are Dravidic influences. Some people think that there are Dravidic influences in the Manayan dialect. So, meaning, people related to the early Dravidic peoples possibly were in Arabia before other languages were adopted. So you always have to, keep your mind open when you're talking about certain things. And one of the reasons people weren't able to put two and two together in terms of the Moors or the people of ancient North Africa were, is because it's known that the Songhai dialects and the Sonic dialects were Nilo-Saharan. So they're thinking, oh well, they could not have been in North Africa, but they basically are still in North Africa.
So something that I really appreciate about your work is that you brilliantly put together like migrations of people in terms of like where they go and like what their names change to over time. Like, so what you just we're talking about concerning like the Songhai and the Zagawa and the Zagai and the Soninke and all those kind of things, which is fantastic. It really paints a detailed picture for people who go over your work. Recently, you said something that blew my mind. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just hoping that people are taking notes on what I'm saying, though, because sometimes I bring this stuff up and then I'll see several months later people asking me the same question about the same people. Like, oh, who are the this, who are the that? I said, but I've been talking about who are the this, who are the that for the last 6 months. What are you talking about? But anyway, yeah, I hope people can kind of are starting now to see the links between all these people. Not everybody can do that, though. I know you can, and certain other people can. But other people need to start taking notes because otherwise they're never going to pick it up. It's just like a language, actually. It's like you're learning a new language.
Well, the beautiful thing about this now is that you have your YouTube page together and you actually have a lot of lessons up there. So I'm trying to, I got the screen share right now. Please go subscribe to this channel, Mount Meru Arts and Music. She has a multitude of lessons that she's already put out, like African Levites and Review of Minoan Moabites, Zagai tribes in Carthage, which is what I'm going to talk about real quick, West African Jews and the Berbers and Habesha, etc. Lots. Esau. Oh, wow. The Esau build. Please go check out the Esau builds.
Oh.
Those ones are complete. Those will leave your jaw on the floor. Those will leave your jaw on the floor.
What was that? The Esau and the Esau. Yeah.
Yeah, this brother here, that picture, that thumbnail is a brother in Palestine or Israel.
Oh yeah, that's Israel, a Canaanite. Yeah.
Yeah. Please go.
Yeah, but you have to remember those people. All these people I'm talking about, basically, including all people, all Black African people. As far as a lot of laymen are concerned, of course. And that includes political people, nationalists. Those people are all slave descendants.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they have a name like Kanana, like this boy comes from the Kanana tribe,
mm-hmm.
If they have the name Quraysh, whatever, even though some of the more, esoteric names like Hameda, Saleh, Banu Saleh, all these tribes that are still dark in color, they're trying to make, a lot of them try to make them into Africans rather than, the ancient Canaanites and the ancient Moabites and the ancient Ammonite, Edomite, people of Noah, Israelite, Canaanite. All those people are still in Arabia and in their ancient homeland of Yemen, in Jordan, and other places. Now, some of the people that you see in the Yemen, like I said, in other places in even Sinai, Palestine, you will see recent African descendants, just like you see mixtures of African people with the peoples, true Arab peoples of Sudan. So, for example, of Sudan and Chad and Libya, there's Arabic people who are dark-skinned, but there are also African people that they mix with sometimes. So, actually there's this kind of little distinction in the appearance of these people that at least I see them. So, for example, when I put up pictures, I put up pictures that look like the Arab people. The Arab, like for example, the name of Moab on the far right up here. These Tarza Arabs, they look exactly like the Arabs that were in Iberia. they're wearing the same costumes as the captured Moors on a depiction of, the king of Aragon. Was it the queen or king of Aragon? There's a painting done in that era. And they have captured Moors, and they look exactly like these Tarza Arabs who occupy Senegal, Mauritania, and once used to live in Morocco. But the Tarza Arabs are direct descendants of the Banu Makil, who are, the same Makil that are in Jordan, claiming to be Moabites. So,
for all Moorish Americans listening, please, if you're not familiar with the Tarza Moors, please go look them up. Tarza, Tarza Moors.
Yeah, I think a lot.
Oh, please go ahead.
No, I think a lot of them are familiar with the Moors, but with the Tarza. And that's another thing. The Tarza are Arabs, they're not Berbers. They're Arabs, and so a lot of people confuse the Berbers with the Arabs. A lot of people confuse because they're both dark skinned, so they say, oh well, they're probably more Berber than Arab, or they're more Arab than Berber, depending on who the group is. And then they'll try to say that, they confuse pictures of the Fulani with the Tuareg, and it's just some of the things that people are doing. You really need to be more careful, because now you can put anything on the internet and it's going to get spread. More lies and distortions about African people are going to be spread. So right now they're going up to Jordan and seeing these people, descendants of ancient Nabatean and Solini Arab people, and claiming that they are Africans. That's what African Americans are doing. They're going over there and doing their so-called research, and they're saying, oh, these are African people, but they don't have they don't have a sense of their own origins. Now, they're African only in the sense that they're affiliated with Africans. Genetically, they are affiliated with North Africans and East Africans mainly. The North African, darker skinned people, and the East African. But, they have the exact names of the people that were in the Hejaz and Sinai and have been there for thousands and thousands of years. Some of those names go back thousands and thousands of years. Well, when I say thousands, I'm talking about like 500 BC, that kind of thing. The Salameans, for example, were in the ancient Nabatean inscriptions. So the Salamean Hawatite in the region, Hawatite, who occupied Jordan and the south of the Dead Sea in this Jordan Valley area, are descendants of those people. And that's why Tacitus said that the Salameans, people think that they were either Assyrians or Ethiopians or Jews. At that time, a lot of those people were the same. Especially, and that they founded Jerusalem, which they did. The ancient Salameans, or Sulini, or Banu Sulaim bin Mansur, children of Manasseh, founded Jerusalem. But it was not necessarily the Jerusalem that's in Israel now, but they probably did that too. But the earliest Jerusalem, of course, is in the Yemen. And there's one place called Cair Sulaim or Cair Sulaimi in Central Arabia. So any place these people moved, they took their geographical names with them. The place names come from their own tribal names.
So something that I came into knowledge recently in one of these recent videos that's on the screen now.
Can I tell you something?
Oh, go ahead.
I didn't eat anything today. That's why I'm drinking my thing. I don't like to drink in front of people or eat in front of people, but I'm drinking my keto drink, just to let you know.
No worries. So in a couple of recent conversations about the Songhai, my mind was blown about a couple of things based upon some other sources I learned about from you, like the Tariq al-Fatash and the Tariq al-Sudan, that talk about the Songhai people, but also talk about people called Israel, and a migration of people potentially from Yemen from the kingdom of Himyar. And so we were in recent conversation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if I heard you incorrectly. I believe you said that the Songhai, or there's some people that talk about the Songhai coming down from either Babylon or Syria and going to Chad. Did I have that correct or no?
Not me. Not
or,
me.
or was that in the article you had me read?
No. Well, the Songhai come from are the Zagai people. That name is the same name. It's just a different spelling. They're called Sugai or Songhai or Zagai, and they came from the Zagai, otherwise called Zagawa in Chad, Zagawa in Chad and Libya. They were called, and they were once spread to the coast, and that's where you get the name Zawaga Berber, or Zagawa Berber, in fact.
Okay.
However, no, I was saying now there's one thing that I've begun to get more information about, because, like I said, some people, some of these Judean people did come from, I don't know which ones, but did come during the time after Nebuchadnezzar invaded the Yemen.
Okay.
And they were, they were pushed different places. But the area of Babylon, according to Salibi, there is also the Babylon of Central Arabia. So I don't know. I have to check what exactly he's talking about. But evidently, the names Sennar and Babylon do not necessarily refer all the time to the Mesopotamian one, even though those people were also, up and way up in Mesopotamia. And the Chaldeans were definitely Arabians that were in charge in Mesopotamia for a while, as were the Amorites. But there's also a Babel in, just like Canaan and a Sennar in southern Arabia. So that I have to check out, what exactly that's, how that links to the traditions of the Africans themselves that say they were once, or the manuscripts that say they were once slaves of the king of Baghdad. Because as I say, a lot of it could be a reference to when, like Sargon, not even Nebuchadnezzar, but earlier, Sargon and other people, Shalmaneser, had invaded Arabia, and these people started, moving into Africa. Now the Levitic people, I would not have said, I don't think I would have said about the Songhai being from Babylon, because, like I said, the traditions claim that they came from, like the Songhai, Wakor, Wangara, claim that they came from, Harun, that they were the Levitic people. Okay. Now, yeah. And also, as I said, the Zagawa, or Zagai people, were the founders of, or at least of Zugatani, which is the area of Carthage, and according to the Portuguese said that, according to African authors, that they were the founders of Carthage, and that goes way, way back to the time, like I say, of Moses, not necessarily to later time period when the Chaldeans and the Assyrians came in and did, kind of subject Arabians, make them subjects. Now, yeah, but there were people that came in later due to, what do you call it? Sargon and, or Sharguni and Nebuchadnezzar, Bukht al-Nasr. Most of those people are still in East Africa, Like I say, the next thing I do on the on YouTube, and by the way, I had changed my schedule from doing it once a week to twice every other week. I'm going to try to do it.
Oh, okay.
So this week I'm not doing it, but next week, I think I skipped a week. this already. I mean, that this will be the week I skip. But anyway, so the next week I'm trying to focus more again on, because I don't think people are getting this, on the connection between the medieval South Arabian tribes and modern tribes in the Horn of Africa, including Ethiopia, Eritrea, Nubia, and Somalia. Because, you have these Jews there, a lot of the Jews there, people with names like Falasha, or supposedly that's a bad name now, but that name, and also Yahar and Yabrin. But people don't seem to realize that those were ancient, or not even ancient, but also medieval Yemenite tribes. Just like, and the Yemenite tribes, those Yemenite tribes were connected very much to the Banu Yamin, or Banu Yam tribe. So the Banu Yam is where everything begins, that Judean or Levitical, Levitical spread. The lineages is spread up from the Banu Lua and the Jersham tribe in that area. And I'm certain, absolutely certain, they'll never find evidence of such people like the Jersham, Banu Jersham, Gershom and Korah and Levi in the Levant, 10,000 BC. You will never find that because those people were in the Yemen. And that's why you do have ancient names of Israelite leaders and Israelite tribes in the Yemen. In fact, you have all the names of the Israelite tribes in the Yemen. I found personally myself a few of the names of the Israelite rulers in the Yemen, and that's why what I put in my book. We'll see, we'll see what people think about that. But in the inscriptions, because the Musnad inscriptions are there, and the Musnad inscriptions, of course, are the very early Sabian Manaean type inscriptions that were related to the Canaanite Hebrew. The Musnad or the Sahidic dialects, so the inscriptions are different than dialect, right? Inscriptions could be for a certain language, but then there's the dialects, and each of these dialects have different inscriptions, or different inscriptions. But the people that speak the dialects closest to ancient Hebrew are aside from now modern Israelis, are the people in, I shouldn't say Hebrew, the ancient Sabian Manaean dialects are the people in Africa, in Ethiopia, the Amhara, Tigray, that area. Their dialects are closely related to the ancient Sabian than the modern Sahidic dialects of South Arabia, which are also related to the ancient Khatan Sabian dialects. BTW, whenever you're talking about Sabian, you're talking about the Khatan dialects and people. So, Joktan is Khatan in the Bible. Joktan is the son of Shem. Or is he son of Eve or son of Shem or son of Shem? I forget. But anyway, all those groups of people, the Eber or Yabrin, the Mahalil or Al-Mahali, and other tribes, even going back before Shem, are in the Yemen. And the tribes that came to be called Ham are among them. So the Hameda or Hamdan tribe, which Abari says was called Hameda, were descendants of the Madij, who come from Khatan or Joktan. But anyway, I got off your point again.
Oh, no, not at all.
I don't even remember what you're talking about.
No, I'm gonna bring it right back. Being that I got the Babylon Zagai information wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong on this point here, because I thought I heard you say something to the effect of what I'm about to say. So please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe I heard you say if there was like proselytization and conversion to Judaism, etc., in West Africa or in Africa, it would have been done by the Zagai or Songhai people, etc. Did I hear that correctly or no?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you heard it, but yeah, but in other words, it would have been done by other African Jews, not
Right.
necessarily Jews coming later into North Africa, because there were a lot of Jews that came in later into North Africa and Spain that were not, Black African related or Black Semitic people.
So if I'm seeing things properly, if I'm looking at things like the Timbuktu Chronicles or the Tariq al-Fatash and Tariq al-Sudan, and I'm reading about Songhai peoples and empires and all that type of stuff, and I'm also reading that there's a migration that comes over from the Himyarite kingdom. Would it be correct to understand that there's and also understanding that you talk, I believe you said that the Ghanaian nobles or the nobles of Ghana were related to was it the Soninke or the Songhai?
But well, really both.
Okay.
Yeah, by the time of between the 3rd century and 10th century, those were Sosu and they're actually both. The Wakor and Wangara were related people. The El Barabir claimed to be related to the rulers of Ghana, but the rulers of Ghana were, they were Soninke, but the same people that later founded Songhai were of the same stock. So it's hard to, because we're talking about different eras. So Songhai is a later era. Songhai is a later era. The Soninke Ghana, of course, goes back to pre-Christian times, really, according to some writers. But these people that founded Ghana, they claim to have come from even further north. So Carthage, the people that founded Carthage, founded later what? They were related to people like the Garamantians, to the Zalgatani people, to the Moors, to Galgal, which is a later expression of Ghana and Songhai. Galgal, I think, it's Galgal is also called Zagai. The people were called Zagai. The people of Chukwuri were called Zagai, and they're all considered Jewish. So that's the strange part. I don't know where these imaginary Jews are supposed to be coming in from different places and making all these people Jewish, and that's why, if you go back 50 years, you'll find that they say that, the rulers of Ghana and Songhai and all these places were Jews, white people that came from North Africa, from places like Warua, which of course was surrounded by Black Berber people and other Black people. But yeah, so that's why it's important to know the chronology and know the names of the tribes, know exactly where they came from. So Jarma, Galgal, and a few other places are called major towns of the Zagai. The Takuru, the Zagai, the Jafun. The Jafun people were Zagai and were also Jewish originally. Or Berber. That's another thing. They're called Berbers. A lot of these people were called Berbers originally. And for some reason, the name stuck with the Tuareg. The Tuareg portion, the second wave of Berbers that Ibn Khaldun talks about. But now, today, of course, not even the Tuareg get to be called Berbers. Right? They're saying they're people that are only part Berber or something like that, because they're dark skinned. And the other Berber nationalists want that, only to be, I don't know what they want, but the only reason why you have genetic connection to that E1B, what's it, E1B1A, so-called Berber
E1B1B.
Yeah, Berber gene is because the Tuareg, who have the most of that gene, used to be settled along the coast there. So they mixed with those people. The ruler Ibn Tumart, a Masmuda, whom I don't know if he was Tuareg or the other type of Berber, the original type of Berber, because the Sanhaja settled in that area, with the Zenana settled in that area. But supposedly the Masmuda were just black-skinned Africans, heavy, not stocky, but they did not ride camels like the Tuareg. They were just sort of, horse riders. They had, what do you call it? They were black-skinned, but they had the tuft, that manned tufts in their head or whatever, Berber tuft. And anyway, Ibn Tumart said that the reason why some of the children of the people in his town were becoming fair, of course, was, and I've said it many times before, people better remember, because during the Almoravid period, they were sending in European Christian soldiers to collect taxes, and those soldiers were taking advantage of the women. And that's how the Masmudas start to change. A lot of the Masmudas start to change color, and now you have whole groups calling themselves Gomara, who are like completely almost European in appearance. But the Gomara used to be the largest group of the Masmuda. So that's like one example of how there's been a change in the North African demographics. And of course, the Tuareg also used to take a lot of different slaves themselves, the ones that were in North Africa and in Sudan. They used to take slaves, both black and white. Now, when we say Tuareg, too, you have to remember we're talking about basically two groups: the noble Tuareg, those very tall people that wear the purple veil, and then the white, the people that wear the white veil or black veil are often the vassal caste or client tribes, who people are now trying to say they're the black Tuareg, but that just started in the last 100 years probably, or last 50 years. But the Tuareg in general are very dark skinned, near black, especially the ones in Burkina Faso and ones in the Sudan. And in Burkina Faso, that's where evidently that gene I was just talking about is found the most among the darker skinned Tuareg of Burkina Faso. So people have to start using logic when it comes to, where do the original Berbers come from? The Tuareg dialects probably took over the ancient North African dialects, whatever they were, possibly Nilo-Saharan. The Tuareg script is not general Berber script. Tifinagh was a Tuareg script. It wasn't known by everybody in North Africa. It was known by the Tuareg. Their name Amazigh was known by just one particular Tuareg tribe, the Imashag or Amazigh. Up until the 20th century, that's the way it was. So that name has been adopted recently by, all Berber speakers in North Africa. So that's like just a nationalist thing, a nationalist name, newer name for people in North Africa in general. But it used to be the name of an ethnic group, and it was mentioned in Roman times, the Mori Mazaziks and Maziks, who were also found in Arabia among the Azd people. And that's why the Tuareg still, when the colonialists met them, claimed to come from Suwar bin Ad. That's why Joseph has said that the Surim or Asurim people were in Africa. That name is changed to Assyrian. I don't know if that's the same thing as Assyrian or not. But when Joseph is talking about these people, he's obviously not talking about the later people that took over Assyria. He's talking about the original Asurim of the Yemen. And the original Maziks of the Yemen are similarly found, like I said, in Nabatean inscriptions. The Mazik people were not just, African people have always been on both sides of the Red Sea. That's all I'm saying. Especially the nomadic ones that were able to travel, through Sinai and stuff like that, or there's people that were sea people like the Phoenicians or Funku in the Yemen. The Canaanites were sea people, a lot of them, and they were able to travel both sides and trade on both sides of the Red Sea.
So some of the people that are listening and watching might not have been familiar with the sources of Al-Tabari and the different tribes that he brought out in Arabia. Those same people will probably not be familiar with Ibn Khaldun and the Berber tribes that he talked about that also had similar concepts. So would you mind touching on them, like the Zanata and the Jarawa and the Magrawa and the Banu Ifran and the
well, first of all, Ibn Khaldun lived, I guess, a couple centuries before, after the start of the African slave trade. I shouldn't say that. After the start of the coming to America of Columbus, people like that. And so it wasn't that long ago. It was like 600 years ago. And he mentioned he was of Andalusian descent, meaning, one of those groups that came back into, or actually not came back into, because most of the people coming from Andalusia at that time or moving into North Africa were not necessarily black. They were people who had been converted. So Ibn Khaldun was also, he had an ancient Hadramaut ancestor. He wasn't Arab, he wasn't Berber, he was basically Andalusian descent, like many people today in North Africa, Andalusian, Genoan, and everything else. So he spoke about the different zones of the world, as well as, the Berbers, and claimed that, for example, that most of the Berbers were of Zanatic stock, and that it was thought that the Berbers had become black because of a curse, and that curse was related to Canaan. He did say that the Berbers definitely were of Canaanite origin. He said, although the traditions differed in regards to, how they came through Canaan, he said they were definitely of Canaanite origin. He also said that there were two people that were Berbers in Africa. One of them was the veiled Berbers, who he also claimed were the Almoravids. So the Almoravids, otherwise known as Tuareg, were the ruling people that were Sinhaja, Lamta, Lamtuna, Yatula, and other tribes. These groups, actually, some of them took the name of the original Berber people, who are these people I was just telling you about, the Songhai Soning people, who were called Barbaria, also until a late period. But anyway, he said that the veiled Berbers were people that had anciently lived after leaving Yemen, or Canaan, I should say, because I don't know if he knew Canaan was in the Yemen, but he said that they had originally lived in the Rif area of Abyssinia. And that area is, of course, the Danakil Afar area. And so it's not surprising that, of course, the later Afar name is found in Tunisia and North Africa, as well as the name Banu Ifrin or Banu Yafrin. But, I'm not saying exactly those are the same people, but definitely the tribe known as Banu Yafrin ended up in North Africa, and now they're in Mali and places like that. And they're Tuareg. So Tuareg, that Banu Yafrin and Magrawa were part of the Zanata Berber groups, as well as the Jarawa or Garawa people, who were, of course, related to more the modern Gorain and Tubo Gorain and people like that. And the Zagai people, more related to the non-camel riding people. So the Tuareg were known for the Maziks, and the noble caste of the Tuareg were known for for riding camels, for not ever getting involved in agriculture, and for using the client tribes for agriculture, and trading with them, client tribes. And many of the client tribes were the original Berbers, or like the people like the Songhai, who were also smiths and traders, mercantile people, just like the Tuareg, fishermen, that type of thing. So if you go to Africa, you'll find, and even Arabia, you'll find a lot of times that the Bedouin people don't want to have anything to do with fish or fishermen, or they consider themselves better than people that work with the fields and work with fish and stuff like that. But and so the Sanhaja people too, that name may have, the Sanhaja and Sanaga, that name may have been originally, just another, a variant of the name Zagai or Zanaga, or excuse me, Isgan, which is the Zagawa name. But in any case, it seems like the Sanhaja were largely made up of these Songhai people, not just Tuareg. So the Tuareg had people like the Alamadan or Lamtuna and the Lamt, and the original Getuls seem to be both Songhai Zagai, and Tuareg. The name Tuareg comes from a place in Libya called Taorga, something. So they were actually, it's the name Targiyat. Targiyat became the Arabicized Tuareg, because it's like a plural for Targa or Targiyat. So, for example, when they said Nugamat al-Targiya, they're not talking about, well, she was a Tuareg warrior who went in with other female Tuareg into Iberia during the early Moorish period. And they were called black Amazon women. And so, but unfortunately, some early translator, not all of them, but one of them, translated the word Dargiya as Turkish leader. So she, the name came to be in that one article, something about, I think it was in Golden Age of the Moors. Either one of the authors put that the name Nugamat al-Targiya meant archer of the Turks. And it doesn't mean Turks, it means of the Targiyat people, or the Targiya, which was the early name of the Tuareg. Tuareg is just the Arabicized name for the Targi people of Libya. So that's one of the tribes of the Imashag or veiled Berbers. And they also had the camels, they had their indigo or purple costume, whatever, veils and all that stuff. And these people also were spread at that time, or at least 11th century, where the veiled people were spread to Zayla in Somalia, not just Zayla in Libya, because and those places were related. I remember the Havila founded Zayla, they founded Zawila and Zayla in Libya, which is part of ancient Ghana, according to Benjamin Tudela, I think it was. I keep confusing Benjamin of Tudela with Benjamin Disraeli. I know one of them said that that Zawila in Libya was part of Ghana. But anyway, so that's how big, that's how expansive Ghana was considered to be, or the people of Ghana were. And like I said, even Gadames in Libya was sometimes considered part of Sudan. So that's very far, close to, I think it's westward of Garamachia. So all that region was part of Sudan, but at the same time part of Numidia and part of, because the ancient Numidians, of course, also were called black, just like the Moors. That's where the Moors were derived, largely in part from the Gatul, or the people called Gatuls, which were in, of course, Algeria, Tunisia, and eastern Morocco. And the name Masili means Mesasili, Sili is supposed to be connected to that of the modern Shilha or Shlu region of the Atlas. So that's how you got the Moors, the Ethiopians that lived in the Atlas or Daris. And also, Josephus, when he's talking about Diodorus, having westward of Hercules and the Afrin and Medianite, all that movement is related to the people that founded the Atlas and to the Moors. So we have to know about, and Hesperia too. That's why, because Hesperia was that area of the Atlas originally, and that's why St. Isidore or of Seville, 7th century, says that the Hesperians and the Garamantians were Ethiopian peoples. So, I don't know why people are so reluctant in academics. They were very reluctant originally. Now, things are changing somewhat. But during the 20th century, they were, trying to make everybody from the Garamantes to the Moors to the Yemenites and Indians into white people. White matriarchal people. And Theop talked about that. The Garamantes being black white matriarchal people ruling over the black teeming race of Negroes. That was the narrative up until probably just 15 years ago, as far as I'm concerned.
Wow.
I don't even know. I think Martin Bernal had a lot to do with changing that, or starting to change that. Because all I know is that in this new book called Black Athena and other books that have started coming out, you see where they mention Isidore of Seville, stating that the Moors are black as night and that kind of thing. And at the time, in his time, in the Roman times, the word Moor for them just meant a person that was black and was used synonymously with the word Niger. So the academics, it's changing. The Garamantes too, they're saying were black skinned, and they talk about they're looking into the works of the what is it, Gothic?
What was that?
Luxurious was a writer who wrote about the Garamantes. I think he was a Vandal or descendant of the Vandals or some Goths or Vandal, I forget. And he wrote about the Garamantians in an epigram being black as pitch, that kind of thing. And then you go to, there was a good book before that called The Eastern Lydians that said that the Tenahu people, after a certain time period when the people of the sea came in, before that, it was mainly the brown type of Libyan, but after that, you do see more of the European under the name Temahu to Tehanu. But that had nothing to do with later Berber peoples, nor did it have something to do with even the early, especially not to do with the early Moors. Those people were not necessarily ancestral to many of the people there now either, because a lot of the people in Libya today are descendants of slaves that were brought in, and Noans and other people, Romans, other fair-skinned people that came in, much, much later. So I don't know why people are trying to make ancient Berbers into those people of the sea people.
So speaking of the ancient Berbers, can you walk me back to the term Berry or the Berry people, and is there a connection, and if so, what is the connection?
Yeah, the Zagai or Zagawa people, their indigenous name is actually Berry or Beria. That's actually their name, their real name. However, the the Arabs picked up on the more ancient Zalga or Zawega name, and that became prominent. And it supposedly means uh, they're a type of their sheep or lamb or something like that. But that name has been in the area, in that North African area for many ages. So that's one of the Berry people, and then the Gnawa or Jainawa, who extended, to Medina or part of Wargla in Algeria. They actually extended between Wargla and the Atlantic, and they were descendants. They considered themselves descendants of the ancient rulers of Ghana, which was in Mauritania. Ghana, the town, was in Mauritania, what's now Mauritania. So there's been a consistent movement of Berry people, or Al-Barabir, further southward. So these Jainawa or Gnawa people, in the 11th century, the Tuareg of Tadmaka start invading them and taking them as servile people. And that's how you got, so many of them involved in the Almoravid invasion into Iberia. And, by that, they also unfortunately became involved in some of the wars and conflicts, early wars and conflicts with the Almohad, Muahid or Masmuda people, who, that's how you hear of them dying too. Like 300 got I'm not sure if this is the Almohad period or the after that, because after that everybody was in Morocco. But the Ganawa were slaughtered. 300 Ganawa were slaughtered in a certain time period. I forget which one, in Morocco. But so yeah, the Ganawa or Jainawa involved the El Barabir and the Amaima I told you about. And of course, originally before they became Magians, because the Magianism was also a very big thing across the Sudan, especially with the Tuareg before they became Muslim. But originally before that, they were Jewish. They were, or at least in the Amima or Lamlam stayed Jewish. Who else? I think in the Galgal people, I think stayed Jewish. Or Calgo, or whatever was the capital of Ghana. And at the same time, it was called, that was also considered Habesha, the land of the Habesha, or Hawassa. Hawassa supposedly is connected to the name Habesha. So that's
Wow.
how.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, they're thinking that because they don't know, why the name Habesha is associated with Cow in Ghana. So, and the Takuri too. The Takuri, the name's Habesh, or was connected to Jarma, which is of course ancient Garmantian capital, and also Cow, and I forget which else other places. But so those are all the Guy people, and the Guy were supposedly Jews and Habesha at the same time. So they may be the Zagwe dynasty, maybe connected to the Zagwe dynasty of Abyssinia as well, who happened to be the same period and were Judeans or Jewish. And that's why, it was Palmer where I originally saw that the Zagwe people were Zagawa people were literally extending from Abyssinia to the Atlantic, Ghana, in the Atlantic.
Would I be correct in understanding that some people believe that the Moors that went into Spain, or at least the general that led them, was of one of the Berber peoples that Ibn Khaldun was talking about.
Well, Ibn Khaldun talked about in general about the Berbers. So when you say one of the peoples,
I believe it's I think it's either Zanata or another Berber tribe that.
Oh, okay. You're talking about. See, there were several major Berber tribes. There were they used to say there were either 3 or there were 5. So it's Zanata, Hawara, Masmuda, Sanhaja, and Kutama. Those were, I think, the 5 major Berber tribes they were considered to be, and that's all these tribes I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
They're made up of these Tuareg and the Berber people. Those are the 5 Berber tribes. They're all said to come from Yemen, or as Ibn Raqiq said, they were 5 Sabian tribes. They were comprised of 600 Berber tribes, and they came originally from the Yemen. So they spread across the Maghreb. That's his writing in his works. So he was a Nafusa Berber, supposedly, right, from the Zanata. I think the guy you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you look at the Nafusa, of course, what are they like? A lot of them are blacker than they're black as Sudanese, a lot of them, and they don't look exactly like. They look like a mixture of Tuareg and I should say maybe Mand people or something like that. To me, they look like both Tuareg and the original Arabian people because of their wideness of their face. They're not all like the tall, narrow-faced Tuareg people. So there's a lot of people were made up of both of those groups. So Soninke were a Mandinka people, and like I said, they were the people that originally made Ghana. They were the original Berber people, and their names a lot of times were taken over by the Tuareg as they came in. The early Masmuda may have been originally more, of the Berber type, Mara type, because, well, we don't know, but all I know is Leo Africanus said that the Masmuda had the same origin as the people of, some place in Libya where the Tubu lived. But then later on, the Tuareg took it over. What's the name of that place? Bordeaux. So, yeah. So we know that the Masmuda definitely were not what they are today, which is basically, they were almost as looking Slavic, and like a lot of them look European, more European than African. So that's what happens when people, mix together. Nothing wrong with it, but nothing wrong with also connecting with the original ancestors instead of trying to say that, oh, no, they weren't black. So, whatever that means.
Hence the fear of blackness, huh?
Exactly. My favorite part in that book, that journal article was when I talked about the slave trade. You know how they said, I don't know if you remember, but they were talking about how one of the favorite things to talk about is how the Berbers of modern Meknes, right? And how they look so much like the French or something, or like the Europeans. And I was writing, well, they should look like the Europeans because that was the capital of the white slave trade. That's where the Berbers brought in so many, tens of thousands of European slaves. So yeah, of course it's going to start looking European.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just thought it was fun, cute, funny.
I was trying not to laugh.
Well, that's been done to us so many times. So they say you can say the same thing about us. Oh well, people in such and such a place are black because there was a lot of slaves brought in. That's true in certain circumstances, but there's also the same thing that happened in Europe, but they don't want to, admit it. Same thing happened in North Africa. Well, in Europe too, it happened in Spain. But, so, you can go back and see everybody. I've been saying for the last maybe 10 years now about the different descriptions of the Berbers. You can say that Europeans described the Berbers as black because they saw everybody with dark skin as black. If you want to say that, fine. But when it comes to Arabic descriptions or descriptions by Iranians in the Arabic language, whatever, when they're talking about Berbers being Aswad or, black or darker than the Beja, that kind of thing, because Ibn Butlan of Iraq claimed that the Beja women were golden colored, while the Berbers were mostly black skinned, and only a very few pale ones among them. So, and I mean, by now people should have this in their head. If they want, should have that automatically in their head, Masmuda, who said they were black skinned? Abu Shama, the Syrian. Ibn Butlan, Iraqi Christian, former slaves, both of them, I think, former slaves. And the last, of course, well, not the last from Masmuda, but one of the main ones was Nasir Khusrau of a Persian, who said they were black-skinned Africans. And he was, observing the Fatimid Masmuda soldiers. And the same thing can be done with the Zenata. Who were the Zenata? They were described as the majority of the Berbers by Ibn Khaldun. What does Ibn Khaldun say about the Berbers? Why did people think that the Berbers were black due to a curse if they weren't black? Why did al-Damashqi come in and say that on his chapter about how Ham turned black? Why does he mention the Nabateans, the Copts, the Berbers, the other Habesha, the other people? Why would they keep referring to the Berbers as black if they were not black skinned? Where do they ever refer to Berbers as not black skinned? They don't. All they mention is the term Abiad used for Tuareg peoples, as well as because the Yantaras, for example, al-Dahabi, who said that the Berbers were people, not Dahabi, Damashqi, who said that the Berbers and the Nabateans were black because they were children of Ham and were black skinned. He says that he calls them Abiad. Why? Because the word Abiad does not mean white. It meant somebody with the clear kind of dark brown, near black skin. It didn't mean a white person. In complexion, I think it's Ibn Munzir or Mundar and al-Dalabi, who said that when the Arabs spoke about complexion, they said the word Abiad meant such and such. Black buckwheat, not, white in the European sense of the word. The word for white in the European sense of the word is red or hamran, not Abiad or Biad. The same thing in Hebrew. That's why I'm glad Dr. Goldenberg brought that up, that it did not refer to fair skin. It meant the tone, or cast of skin, like a brightness of skin. That's why the Arabs also even used it for the Ethiopians sometimes in their poems. And that's why Ibn Hakul said that well, first of all, like Wesley and other people brought this up, this man named Billy, a Sudanese scholar that unfortunately he's gone now, he's passed on. I was going to try to get in touch with him, but he's not here anymore. But he first pointed out that the Beja were the same color as the Arabs. The Beja of Nubia were the same color as the Arabs. Ibn Hakul was, I think he was from the original Arab people too. He wasn't like a hadith writer of Iran or whatever, Armenia or Iraq and Syria. So he also said again that the Arab people were, sometimes darker than the Abyssinians. Some of the Abyssinians were lighter than Arab. That's why Ibn Jawzi uses the word Sumer for the Arabs and the Abyssinians or Ethiopians. Sumer or Samar meaning black or near black in color. Especially among the Bedouin Arabs. Did not mean fair, tanned or anything like that. And I know in Lebanon, Lebanon or somewhere else, north where people are not really Arab anyway, they use the word asmar for like tan, darkened, where they don't, where they don't have many black people, they use the word for dark-skinned Lebanese, I think. But anyway, that's why you have to know all the ins and outs, all the details.
Yes, ma'am. There's a lot of details to know.
Yep.
I think I have one more question for right now, and it doesn't even touch on the whole rest of your book. There's so much more to touch on, like you're talking about. There's a lot of details there, and I suggest people grab the book, and I suggest people go to your blog spot and get really informed on the information there, because it's a really good primer for the book. But there was some interesting information that's in one of the videos on your YouTube page now that I thought was interesting, that I kind of want to talk about now, being that it's Black History Month, etc. And some of the Moors might not have known about it. But you were bringing out some interesting information about Moabites and I believe the Makil Arabs and the Moahibid, etc., and some of that's in your book. And I would love for you to touch on that here, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I was just stating that, the children of Lut and the Bila tribes are mentioned together by the colonialists, and they are also mentioned with the people called Hameda, who are in that area today, who tend to be, well, at least the children of Lut and the Bila, not the Bila of modern times, but the Bila of early medieval times, Balawi of Ibn Khaldun's time were, always often mentioned together. Now, if you look at the Bible, Bela, and these people are mentioned together in Jordan, like I'm talking about, Jordan and southern Palestine. They're all considered, Ammonite, Moabite people, but Bela was the name of an Edomite ruler. And the Edomites who were working for, Bela is also called Balaam. Was it Balaam or Balak? I forget now. Oh. Anyway, Bela was called Balaam. That's right, Balaam, because he was considered the same as Luqman, and working with the Moabite, or for the Moabite ruler, Balak. And so I was just pointing out that these people are mentioned together. Not only were they together in Yemen, but they were together in Jordan. And the area called Karak is now known as Gur Safi, and is known to be where the people related to the Moabites were settled. The Ma'ain, not far from Amman, which is named for, of course, the early Ammonites. Ammonites. Now, see, I'm not familiar with Hebrew that much, but I do know it seems to be that wherever when they use the letter O sound, or the O sound comes out, seems to have been a different letter. I don't think the Arabic or the early Canaanite people used O as much as modern people speaking Hebrew in Israel do.
Interesting.
Yeah, because Ammonite would have been either Amun or Aman. So the Umanatai or Ammonite, they're called, by the ancient Greeks, they're called Aman or Uman. And the Uman, of course, of modern Oman, what we call Oman, say again, Uman, they are supposed to be the same people as the Azd Oman or Aman. The Azd Aman were next to the Kudat along the coast of Yemen, but they also came to live next to Petra in Jordan. And they were the founders of, according to, that's according to the ancient Greek writers. I forget if that was Ptolemy or Pliny, I think Roman. I can't remember who wrote that, but they were living next to Petra at that time. The Omanitai, they're called. So today, that area that they founded was called Aman. Now, in the Bible, of course, the Moab and Ammon, or Ammon, the Ammonites, are children of Lut. It's also called, we call him Lot, but in Arabic, Lut. And of course, the Maonians are with them. There's supposed to be some kind of brethren. And then Zohar was a daughter. I think was Zohar was a daughter. No. What's the other? There's another name of. Anyway, these people found all those names. The 5 names that they had of the Moabite lands are found in Jordan as well. Among them are Zikra, or Zikra, and I think Zohar is another one. Beit Shan is another, and I forget the other ones, but I know also that Jericho is in that area. So it's called Ariha in the Gower area or Jordan Valley area. And you still find black people in Jericho. And I think that Canaanavoy, in fact, even came from that picture that you showed in the beginning was from Jericho. But there were also Jews in the Gorani area, or Jordan Valley area. Now this Goran, when I'm saying the Gower or the Goran area, that's not the same as the Quran of Africa or the Quran of of the Radaman tribe of Madij in South Arabia. That's different people. They might be the same people, but they're not connected to the Gower area, which is in Jordan. And they're just called Gorani, meaning the people of the Gower. Now, Gorani has come to mean like the Valley Blacks, refers to Valley people, but now it means like the Valley Blacks because most of the people there are, the Gorani are black, or they're dark people who look like Africans, or brown people look like Africans, sub-Saharan Africans. And those are the people that are called in Crusader texts, they're called the Moabites. So, but even as late as the colonial period, the colonialists refer to the Hameda people up there as, descendants of Lut and the Moabite people. And it's the Hameda people that were supposed to have held the Moabite stone. They got that stone from them. And the Hameda also, of course, though, came up to that area probably in Islamic times. And if they didn't, I know they came to Sinai in Islamic times, and they were also in Sinai as minors. I was just saying how that Tabari had said that the Hameda are also known as the Hamdan. In Yemen, they're known as Hamdan, but they're the same as the Hameda. Hameda are found in different parts of, Arabia, and they're often associated with mining. Often, of course, a lot darker than the modern so-called Arabs that are not, that are more Syrian-looking. And they are the descendants, descendants of the people in the Bible called Hamathites. They're the miners called Hamathites or Ham. So they occupied a coast called, also occupied the coast called Hamaon. Hamaon was, there was gold right near Canalna, which is the land of Canaan. These areas are south of Jordan in Arabia. But Moab is very much connected to, the Ham, even though, the Moabites and Ammonites, I think they're supposed to be in the Bible. They're both Hamites, somehow connected to Ham and Shem. Just like Lud, Lud and Mash and other people are sometimes made both children of Shem or children of Ham. And that's because the Ham of the Bible was actually descendants of these Joktan people, the Joktan or Khatan people. So it's really not relevant to, in a historical context, that idea of Ham, Shem, and Japheth being three different colored people and three people from all over the world. It's not relevant to the real original peoples that were known under those names as Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And even in India, you have the same thing. And what was it? Homa, Sema, and Jalspita. The same allegory. So I don't know which came first either, because possible it came from the same people, the Persians, that kind of thing.
So with that family, we have not even touched on close to everything that's in the book. There's a lot being left out, and we've already cracked 3 hours. With that family, I'm definitely gonna recommend that you go check out the book, that you go check out the blog spot, and you go check out her YouTube, where she has, again, go check her out on Facebook and go friend her on Facebook, because on, like you're saying, bi-weekly, what she does is she drops a Zoom link on her Facebook page and does a public class for everybody. And then puts it up on YouTube. It is a great service to the people that she does. Fantastic information, and she's right there with you, walking you through it. And it's a lot of information to walk through.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you do this kind of thing too, because people can then, if you want, I could stay and answer some questions. I'm not. I know people probably are getting tired, probably want to go, but.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on, let me see.
I just see a lot of.
Okay. Here's a question.
Oh.
Has Dr. Marnici heard of a contemporary historian named Dan Gibson and his work, a different focal aspect? I believe he does a lot of stuff dealing with Mecca being in Petra.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that idea. Yeah.
Okay. Let me see if I can
I've
find
heard of it. But most of the Arabs weren't even in Petra, let alone Mecca. So. Now, Nabateans came up there. Only goes back to their inscriptions only go back to the 7th century or 600s BC up there, and they claim to come from Yemen, and they were the earliest people. Basically, Nabateans and Solini or Solonians, the earliest people there. They came from Thalaba, which was an area of otherwise known as, like I said in the one class, Shalabin or Shalabon. The Shalabonites are mentioned in the Bible too. And the name, and the reason we know it's the same is because the name Shalaba or Shalabin and Thalaba both mean the same thing, fox. So the city of the fox people.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a whole bunch of questions, but I am seeing this statement here by Taiji Panda. It says, "Thanks for the class. It's fantastic work and information." I completely agree.
Thank you. Thank you for your compliment. Where are you from, anyway? I don't know if he's still there.
Taiji Panda, I have no idea. No idea. Got a Chinese flair to it, though.
Could be Indian too.
Yeah, true.
And but no, I just see a lot of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are sitting back taking notes, and a lot of times you end up doing something that Anonymous said earlier, like which I'll start to ask a question and you come right around and end up getting to it anyway before I ask the question.
Oh. Here we go. Who is this? What kind of name is this? Yahoo. Sounds like it's originally Turkish or something. Let me see what.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's a real name, to tell you the truth. But I know that people that came into the Yemen, there's a lot of people there from originally from Afghanistan and kind of Turkish and Central Asian looking people or Persian looking people, because they were brought in large numbers to do the mining, but also during, I forget what time it was, but there was even a time when they were brought in to fight against, after Islamic times, to fight against some people, and the Hamdan tribe and other tribes were kicked out of their towns, like especially out of Sana'a and stuff. So that's why you see a lot of people that look like Persian or North Indian and like Syrian in that area, because and we know that that's where they're from because of the culture, the flower hats and the conical, very ancient Tocharian Central Asian hats, and other things, but which is not to say that they shouldn't be called Arabs, but I'm just saying the original Arabs, of course, were not that. They were not J1 people. They were not people that looked like Parthians. The Parthians did settle in places like Syria and in the area of Nabatea, and influenced that area too. So I don't know if that's the J1 people that people are picking up. So just to in case that person is one of those people that came in later, from later people like Wahab ibn Munabbih, Ibn Qutayba, and other people that were converted from Judaism were actually of Persian background. The people that they're writing about the tribes that came into Africa, like the Eshban, when they said the Eshban in the Quran, and the Zan migrated from, our descendants of Canaan, and migrated into Africa. That's who wrote that. It's Persian type people that were in Yemen in the 9th century, well, I don't want to go take up all, I don't want to go on and on, but I just find it funny that people, why am I the only one that figures out that point when you have the Munabbih descendants of the Janba tribe? The Janba look exactly like the Persian, and you have the Janaba tribe who look like, they're like black, and they look like Arabs. They look like more like Arabs. I don't know how to explain it, but there's a different look to Arabs than these Syrian people, Syrian and Iranian looking people. Mm-hmm. Anyway, they both claim to be Madij, and yet Madij said that it would be impossible if there was ever a fair-skinned Arab. That's what literally they write, and that they said, and what is Ibn Rabbi of Cordoba, he wrote about the Madij, who said that, and that, not only that, but that seeing one was as rare as the seven wonders of the world. So, and that was like, over 1,000 years ago that they said that. So things change.
So Mike P wants to know where is ancient Sumer, or where's the modern day place that you would find ancient Sumer, if that makes sense.
Southern Iraq. Southern Iraq.
Earlier, did you say that Kamal Saleeby said that he believes that it's in Central Arabia, or okay?
No, I said Babel.
Babel. Excuse me.
Big difference.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not saying that both the original Babylon and Babel, or the Babylon of the Bible, or the Babylon of the Senar of the other texts were the same thing. Just like Damascus is also found as a tribal name in the Yemen, and in a place in the Yemen, in a seer. Then if you look up now, you could find the name Damascena or Damascus tribe, among one of the fighting the Houthis or Houthis or whatever they're called over there in Yemen. All those tribal names are still there. It's not like they disappeared or anything. The Damashik, that's it, Damashik tribe. The Agag tribe, because there's an ancient Agag in the Bible. Most of those tribal names are still in Yemen. Now, not all the people look the same as the ancient Yemenites, but for example, a lot of the Yemenites claim descent from Hamdan. Of course, the Hamdan were one people, and of course they were not fair-skinned. But the Bakil and other groups of major groups of Yemenites claim descent from the Hamdan. And of course, the Hamdan were of the Madij, they were both black. They were where we get the name Ham from, and that so-called curse of Ham comes from them.
Was there in your book? Was there a connection with Hamdan and the Hamathites, or did I have that? Do I have that one?
Yeah,
misconstrued. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to, and you can see it because the names of the tribes remember, the Hamathites are the ancestors of the Kenites. The Kenites are the ancestors of the Judeans. If you look, you'll see the Kenites and the Judeans. Caleb and the Judeans are all related to the Kenites, right? So, I'm looking at this competing between the Arab Civil Wars and the various Crusades period. The Great Mountain. Arab Civil Wars? Which one is that?
Sankofa John, can you try to clarify a little bit more?
Yeah.
I think he's probably talking about like maybe the back and forth in Islam.
Oh, Islam. I don't really know much about I don't even get into Islam really, or the Abbasid and the Shia and all that stuff, but it does have a lot. The Abbasids have a lot to do with why there are no. I mean, a lot of the paintings and stuff that we see are of non-Arab people or look not black, because if Arabs, of course, being true Semitic people, did not paint themselves you didn't paint images of people, let alone the prophet, but people in general, they didn't like to paint them, even in Amorite times that really didn't happen. Crusaders. The Crusaders always described, who they saw. They said the Saracens, for example, were black as soot. The Moors, they said, were black and took their name from their color. According to the Crusaders, of course, that's not what probably the original Moors were named themselves Moors or Maori. See, that's the thing. This thing that I just saw about the, in the Targums, which is very early, stating that the word Maori, the Maori were the Rama, that has to be looked into, because it might be that the word Rama is, related to the word Maori. And of course, if so, that's Rama is of course a god, deity, ancient deity, like all the rest of the major people of Genesis. A lot of them were just deities and stuff that their ancient kings were named from. But so Rama and Cush, Saba, Dedan, those are all ancient names of ancient rulers, but also god names, names for cosmological functions. Well, I was saying something before I stopped, but and then we were trying to get off, but I can't remember what I was talking about before. Oh, wait, one thing, Kenites. Yeah, if you look in the Bible, you'll see that all these tribes of Judeans, the Salma, Bethuel, and all those people came from the Kenites. And Kenites and Hamathites, those were, I don't know why I got into that, but Hameda was the house of Hameda or Rechab were related to the Kenites. And those were, the Sulaim, bin Mansur, have all those tribal names. That's what I was trying to say. Have all those tribal names within them. The Halik or Halakites, the Watar, Utur, or in the Bible it's Ater. You have the Musalima or Meshulama, and Meshulama. All those are names of tribes. The Sulaim tribes among the Hawatite and Harb, or Harb are the people in Hijaz, between Mecca and in Hijaz. And the Hawatite were people further north in Petra, in that area, Petra. And those people are like the Hamatite people. Now, interestingly, yeah, I'll have to look up. I think I got into that because you told me that somebody said something about Mecca and Petra.
Yeah,
however,
Dan Gibson.
However, it's known that as far as the people that are concerned today, they don't go back there back to several hundred years BC, except for the Nabateans. And the Nabateans were, of the Azd people, Salaba, who later became known as the Nabit or Nabate, who came to be the Ansar people, the Nabit of the Aus, who kept their agreement with the Sulaim until the time of Muhammad, who said, no, you can't have that anymore in Islam. And the reason we know about their agreement is because of inscriptions that talk about the contract that they had with each other, the Sulaimi or Solomonians and the Nabateans or Nabit tribe. So that's why history becomes, that's how history becomes real, because you're seeing that, yes, later on they still kept in the documents it talks about the Sulaim wanting to keep their allegiance with the Nabateans, or excuse me, the Nabate, Ansar, Nabate of the Aus tribe of Ansar, and they also say that the these Nabate people were from the Aus, who come from Thalaba. And Thalaba came from the Az people who had settled south of the Asir area in Tahama, and that's the Shalabin of the Bible. So if you look at the Torah, you'll see Shalabin related to other place names, and you'll see all those place names in the Yemen, at least in the medieval period in the Yemen. That's how we know, that there's a very little chance that these people lived in the Levant or Petra, that it was, so either the Bible made up stuff or all these Arab tribes lied about their origins. But I was saying that, just in the last 6 months, I found out that the Targum writes about Moors being from Rama, who Josephus mentions as being from, Canaan. And so the inscriptions are very important, when talking about this kind of stuff. So I don't know what kind of inscriptions this man found which suggests that Mecca was in Petra. Iram is supposed to have been in Petra too, but there were more than one Iram. There were 2 Irams in Yemen, one in Petra where the people brought it. They wanted Iram is still near what's called the Adite Way, because in Hadramaut, and the Adites were said to have been living or founded, I think, Iram, otherwise called Ubar or Wabar. So, and we know that in the other Iram was near Lahij in Yemen. So these people called Iram that they're talking about, Iram, in the Bible are called Aram, or Arameans. So it's Arameans brought their ancient dialect northward as Nabateans. Nabateans lived in the Yemen near these places, and they were called Arameans. The Aramean language is the language of the Nabateans and was later adopted by other people like the Parthians who moved into Syria. And because the Nabateans once ruled these areas in Babylon, Syria, even further, or according to Masudi, further west in Persia. But that would have been, of course, between 1,500 and 1,500 BC. That was when Babylonia was Amorite, because that's what the Nabateans were called later on too, Amorites. I think by Nabonidus, the Chaldean. So these westward people, by that time they were in Petra and Jordan and west of Babylon, they were called Amorites. And that's how the word Amorite probably came to mean Westerner. But the name Amorite may very well be related to one of the names of the, Nabatean tribe or Amorite tribe. Because the name Amarat is found in the region, the name Murrah. So the word Amarat is supposed to be, some people think from Amaru, the Amaru people. Anyway, and as I was saying in the last YouTube thing I did, the names of the Amorite tribes, like Arabian Amorite, those are tribes of Central Arabia, even today, I think. The Rabia tribe was the tribe related to the Hawazin bin Mansur, and related to Beni Amr bin Zaza, related to Taglib bin Wail and Numair bin Wail ibn Kasib, or Numair ibn Kasib bin Wail. And Numair ibn Kasib bin Wail was Nimrod, son of Cush, they call him in the Bible. And that tribal area was, tribes of Rabia, Taglib bin Wail, and those people were historical people. So, but the name Nimrod is supposed to go back, way thousands of years before. But in medieval times, you still have them in the Central Arabian desert. And as I was saying before, they're the same people as were called Hawazin or Hawazin bin Mansur, are very closely related to them, as well as to the Kab, because the Kab and Rabia were connected to the Beni Amr bin Zaza, who were from Hawazin. And I said the Kab tribes are still, in Iraq, still very dark skinned. and the ones that are discriminated against as blacks. So, not, like I said, not all, but 2/3 of the Arabs are supposed to be from those people. Those people who originate in Central Arabian people. Otherwise, actually, their general name became Qais Aylan. Qais Aylan. And those are the people that settled after the Nabati and the Salami. They settled in the Islamic period, they settled in Syria and had different dynasties there. So, I mean, we go on and on and on and on. Because after all, it's centuries and centuries of history. So,
Right.
Yeah, the problem is that they didn't include us in that history, or they didn't include the black Arabs in that history. So I'm just talking about it in a different way.
No, we definitely appreciate the work you've done and the work you continue to do in that field.
Thank you.
So many thanks.
I appreciate you listening, because something wants to get out. That's for sure.
I know that's right. I don't want to, and I hate stopping you because, like I say, like a lot of gold comes out.
Yeah. Treasures, like they said, the gold. What's that one that Ibn Abd Rabbi said? The unique necklace, the precious necklace, because the Arab history for them was, all the history and the different genealogy and stuff like that. That was those are jewels for them too. Even if the people were not Arab themselves, like Ibn Abd Rabbi, who wrote that, he was not Arab, he was Persian origin, and he lived in Cordoba. So he might have been Arabic, but he wasn't Arab in the sense of being of the original Arabs, or at least Now, many of these people could have had, some of these people, like in Iran, could have had an Arab ancestor. I'm not saying that that's not possible, but the earlier Arabs would not have considered them Arabs because, like I say, they considered fair-skin to be, first of all, they looked down upon it because it was the complexion of the slaves. They considered themselves connected more to the Africans. Bilal himself was not African, he was Arab and African. He was not completely African. I think his father was Arab and his mother was African. But anyway, yeah, so if people want to keep changing history, then it has to be changed back. That's all I got to say. They want to make up slave narratives, Tarzan, two can play that game. We can go through and talk about all the different places that the slaves were taken from the Greeks and the Slavs and all that stuff, and which tribe they were brought to in Arabian and North Africa. I could do that. I've done some of it already, but I really would not like to talk about that. I really would just like to talk about the history of those people who were the Arabs and the Berbers and Israelites, Canaanites, and how their heritage became lost.
Mm-hmm.
And was adopted by other people who have since changed a lot of times the meaning of the culture or the heritage, because there's certain things in there that if you mention it, it's considered haram, or it's considered to be taboo now to talk about it, by the Middle Eastern people that are claiming to be related to the Arabs. Thinking, the true Judaism, according to this guy that was from Israel, his parents were from the Yemen, and he was a regular black-looking person, except his hair was longer, and dreadlocks, like I said. He told me that the true Judaism was actually Kabbalah. That was true Judaism, and so. And if people aren't willing to, recognize that, It's for the same reason they don't want to recognize who those people were. They don't want to recognize that a lot of it was based on astrology, more related to Hinduism in many respects than to, or Sufi, the Sufi tradition. That's why I would like to study that, because I think that's probably closer related to the original Arab, Arabian worship. Now, some of the Arabs adopted some of the customs of the original Persian people, because originally they were under the Persian vassals of the Persians. When I say Persians, I'm talking about the Sassanid kind of Persian, or the Parthians, people that came after the original Persians, who were, of course, just like the Arabs, mainly of Ethiopic, Sudanic origin, from Azdahak, and those people that were in the Yemen, according to the Persian tradition. So Zoroastrianism and all the Kabbalah and even the African, mystery traditions are all related to early Islam too, to Sufism. So it's kept in Sufism, it's kept alive in some of the esoteric traditions of Christianity, Gnostic Christianity. So those are basically just traditions of the original black people of those regions, but then other people came along and couldn't comprehend it, because that's wasn't part of their world. Astrology and all that stuff was brought to their world later. No, I was saying that the Arabs have been vassals of the Parthians, or Sassanids, or maybe both, I forget which one. And, the adoption of, what do you call it, the veil that women wear and all that stuff came at the time when, the Persians were in charge, and then the Arab women were being taken advantage of. So they had to keep their veils on, and it became very strict. Everything became very strict, around Mecca and Medina because of that. And because, they just needed strictness. And Muhammad also advocated that strictness, aside from being also originally of Judean origin, the Jews were more strict in certain things, even up until late. They didn't drink wine. They didn't. There's just a lot of stuff that also became part of Islam, early Islam. So everything has to be taken into account. You have to acknowledge everything. How much, Judaism and the Judeans basically were the Sulaim people and other Arabian people that later became Muslim. A lot of times. The same thing and also the Christians.
Mike B asks, is there any connection between ancient Persians and people of India, Pakistan?
Well, that's what I was just mentioning. I was just talking about the people of Persia and how originally, they were connected to why am I hearing an echo? Let me see. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. I don't hear echo at all.
You hear an echo? I hear an echo.
I don't hear an echo.
Okay, let it gone. But anyway, no, I was saying that every group that has been in Arabia and Syria and Iraq, Armenia, all those people were also part of the people of what's now called the Indian Peninsula. So yeah, of course, Pakistan and India, those people all moved over there. But what happened was, and there was also the Austric people were already there in India, mainly. Austric and other people were already there, but a lot of the people that were in Arabia and Syria, Iraq, Armenia, both black and non-black or white, they were white. Scythic peoples moved into India. So people of India are basically a mixture of the different all those different peoples. And same thing for Pakistan. Because Pakistan is basically the northern part of India. Supposedly, some of my Indian ancestors came from that northwest India, Pakistan. So, and the Afghanis people, places like that, like called Afghanistan, and part of Pakistan, part of Tabaristan, and all those, like I said, this Armenians. That area was Persia, and also influenced by Persian populations and culture. And of course, like I said, there are different Persian periods. The Achaemenid period of the Dahai people, who were said to be from Azdahak, all those darker skinned Persians were supposed to have been from Arabia, claiming descent from Azdahak, the brother of Adnan, who founded Aden in Arabia. And then you had the Sassanid period, where you have less African-looking people, and the Parthians too, even though the Parthians, they were roaming around with the Dahai people. And you'll even see in the early Vedas, they talk about the Dahai being black people who had Tripura. They were the people in Central Asia that had the Tripura, or the triple-walled towns of triple walled. And so this thing about the Aryans and the Dahai, originally those were two of the same people, but what happened was people of related to, Armenians, people of Fergana, and people further north, possibly even Balkans and places like that, started entering into India. And they, just like the change that occurred in the interpretation of the Torah, the same thing happened in the Indian texts, where you have the Aryans becoming basically the fair-skinned people ruled by Indra, and then you have the darker-skinned people who live in they're called the Melucha. But in reality, originally all those people were the same people. The Melucha, who were probably the same people as the Amalekites, whatever. And because I say that, because in one of the ancient works, I forget the name of it, but it talks about the Melucha people having a leader named Musa, and of course in the Misra, Katarvedi, or Kaftorim, and all these descendants of, basically descendants of Noah. All that tradition is over there too, in some of the traditions of India, But like I say, over time, these traditions become distorted by other people that are moving in. This might have been for example, like I say, the Aryans, that name was one of the names for the Nabateans. That name Arya was one of the names of the Nabateans who occupied Persia, according to the Arab writers. And then the Scythians, according to Herodotus, Scythic people, using soma, which I guess is an ancient plant or something, drink or something, they adopted the, the name Arya, and I think something else, from the Medes, who were connected to the early Persians. So, so the name Arya came to refer to non-black people, but originally was supposed to be a word meaning lion, and was associated with the Nabateans. And that's why also you see, the time is it. That's why you also see the Armenians have traditions too of being from Ad and the Arambi and the early Arab people, Amalekite people, because those people moved up in early times into those areas. Later on, other peoples moved into those areas. More so-called Caucasian or Caucasic people moved into that area. into Armenia and down into further south, southern part of Central Asia, and into India finally. And that was, of course, BC. That started all BC.
Well, family, if you combine these last two interviews together, that is over 10 hours worth of information you have to go glean. But I'm still going to ask the sister to come back for another interview at one point to cover the rest of the stuff in the book we didn't touch.
That's going to be impossible, but okay.
Well, not all of it, but obviously we gotta get the book. But there's a lot. There's always a lot. So it's like we sometimes people got to hear it a couple times. You know what I'm saying? Just to get the story straight.
A lot of times, yeah.
Yeah, no.
Because if somebody doesn't get what I'm saying about the Sulaim,
right,
I may have to take away privileges or something.
It might be worth it just to have you come back just to really do a deep focus on it, just so people understand the how integral it is to what you're talking about on certain things.
Yeah. Or else I was thinking sometime I can go through the Black Spot.
Sure.
Some of the blogs posts talk specifically about like the Sulaim and their connection to mining. I call 3 posts, book length posts about the Sulaim and King Solomon, the miners, and their connection to the Hamathites and the Judeans, Kenites, Yahweh, and all that stuff. Which I'm sure you saw that.
Yeah, I think it would be fantastic to go through your blog spot with you personally. I think that would be fantastic for the people and me, because I might have seen things a certain way and got it incorrect, and I might need you to correct them like I typically need. You know what I'm saying? So that would be much appreciated.
Well, yeah, I can do it either on your you can have me back soon and I can do that, or
sure.
Next week, like I say, for me, I might just focus on the connections between the tribes in ancient Yemen and their connection between these people, the same names in ancient Africa, and including the Libya, Maghreb area. Because, like I say, the Maghreb has people that have the same names as were known in the ancient Red Sea area at that time in the Roman period.
So if you're interested in turning up for that discussion, family, find her on Facebook. She is Dana Reynolds Mornici on Facebook. And she will drop the Zoom link and you can jump into the classroom. And you can also see the video later if you're not able to make the class at Mount Meru Arts and Music. The name on the screen. Please go check out that YouTube page and please go subscribe. Very rarely do you get people. This is a very rare treasure here, family. We have a scholar who was willing to sit down and give free open classes about her information. This is a national treasure right here. So please don't pass up the offer. Whenever I have the offer, I don't get to make all the classes, but whenever I get a chance to, I definitely do. It's worth it.
Looking and giggling because that person that was, I guess that black person was talking about J1 again. People start talking about DNA, which it's very, very complex, and then they start talking about connection of modern Arabs with J1, which is fine with me because it has nothing to do with ancient Arabs. But yeah, modern Arabs, I'm sure they are J1, a lot of them, but it has nothing to do with the ancient ones or the black. I'm sure if they took the genetics of a lot of the people that are dark-skinned Hajjamoutis, instead of saying that they're all slaves, if they took their genetics, they would find a completely different thing. They would find out that they were related to people in Jordan, and then some of the blacker people in the rest of the peninsula, as well as a lot of the Africans. So,
well, there you have it, family.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tyron, and it was very this gives me as much satisfaction as it probably does other people to hear, that I'm able to say it out loud and give it to people. It's a treasure house of knowledge that we have now. Because, and that we have to start taking seriously. Pick up the jewels, wear it around your neck. Don't forget why these people matter, who these people are. Don't make up your own thing about them. There's no need to do that anymore.
And it's
all the evidence now.
And please understand, family, it's an extremely well sourced treasure trove.
That's
the sister is extremely meticulous about her sourcing, family.
Even though there are a few mistakes I made in that book, but yeah, the book has a lot more put together than in a long time. So.
Yes. Like I joke with some of my friends and say, sometimes half the page is footnotes.
I think three quarters sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
but I know it might be funny, but that's the way a lot of academic books are, so.
Yeah, exactly. It's that thick of information, family. You need to understand.
You have to sometimes, so people can't make up stuff. Look, what I would tell people to get that book that you have now, Corpus of Arabic. He puts all his footnotes in the back, I guess, or the end notes. Was that you that said you had the Corpus of Arabic sources?
Yes, ma'am, I just got it.
They have to go through that, and sometimes the footnotes have more important information than the rest of it. In fact, I'd say most of the time it does.
Yeah, the corpus of early Arabic sources for West African history.
Right, yeah. And just remember to read it, take it with a grain of salt, because some of the interpretations, especially when it comes to Black people in there, are, incorrect as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I would definitely recommend that people read it in conjunction with your blog spot, because a lot of those missteps become seeable with your information.
Right.
But with that, family, stay tuned for the next interview. Please don't hesitate to tune in next week for the sisters talk on her channel.
Yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed it and took notes. So we can have some good questions next time too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she will go through your questions with you on her time, family. It's a beautiful thing, because it's like a class. We a whole bunch of people will show up, or a few people will show up, and it's interesting because we all got different perspectives on it, and we all get scared when it's time for the pop quiz.
I know, that's why I just tease you guys with that. I'm not going to put you on the spot anymore. that could be
no, I still need it because it helps me know where I'm strong and where I'm weak on understanding the picture, because first of all, what I learned from your information is how much I'm beginning. I got a grasp on how much I don't know, right? Like your information let me know there was a big aspect of the picture I was not seeing and was not being shown, and the depths of how far it goes. Like the more you scratch, there's more layers. The more layers there are to the onion and whatnot. So
yeah, exactly, yeah.
So no, I appreciate the pop quiz and making sure it checks me, so I never get comfortable thinking I got it, because I don't. I know I don't.
Well, people need to start taking notes. That's all I know. Because
yeah,
I want to get to the more, in-depth information, all of it, and not just have to keep going back over the same thing about the Soleim, about the Madij, the Nawa. Well, no, the Nawa is kind of new stuff, but the Zagai, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a guy that blew my mind. I'm not gonna lie. There was aspects of like when it really sunk in, like when I was. So, because typically, when understanding like Israelite migrations into West Africa, I'll look at something like the Tariq al-Fatah and Tariq al-Sudan, and I'll understand certain things from like the Yemenite migration side. But when you started talking about like breaking down the Songhai and Zagai and Zagawa aspect, I was like, wow, wait a minute, whoa. they like, because they talk a lot about the Songhai there. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I didn't even recognize it had that many multifacets to it.
Yeah, the Songhai is just another name for the Sugai or Isuagin speakers, otherwise called Sagai, and in Chad called Zagawa.
You
Or
know?
Zawaga, depending on the age, era they're talking about. Thank you, Raybon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hmm.
And stay tuned, because I'm definitely going to try to bring Dana around on as many different channels as I can. I'm going to air this on a couple different channels, and
Okay.
I'll definitely be getting at you about doing interviews with other people on other channels in the future. Because, like I said, this is important, integral information, and I think the Israelites, once they start to understand what you're talking about, I think they'll find it extremely invaluable. Like I don't think they know what they're missing yet, and once they find out, I think they'll latch onto it real fast.
Right. I think so. Like I said, I've been feeling drawn to that aspect of the African American community. So, yeah.
But thank you, as always. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for what you do, because it's priceless.
Okay. Thank you, Tavon.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Go. You can finish up.
No, I was just going to say it's a pleasure for you to have me on. I'm just being interrupted again by somebody. So, okay, I'll see you next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take care, family. Take care, family, and we will see you next time.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. With that, I say I'm gonna leave y'all with a cut like I normally do, and I say peace and love, family.
Thank you.